across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening. This is Talk. It's the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell with you for the next 3 hours between now and 10 o'clock. Delighted to have your company. We're asking the question about Andy Burnham's government. He says he wants to be the cost of living government. Well, actually, can we afford the cost of Burnham? How on earth are they going to fund all the things they want to fund? An end to rough sleeping? Great. Great ambition. Where's the money? Building 500,000 new council houses? Great. Fantastic. Where's the money? Launching a national care service? Great, fantastic. Where's the money? Lots of questions today about his different appointments. Also a blast from the not so distant past, Darren Jones, who was, of course, Keir Starmer's representative on Earth. He has come out and said that the cut to energy bills isn't funded, and there's consternation and worry today about whether ID cards are actually off the table or not, digital IDs. Lots to discuss and all of that. We'll speak to the Shadow Defence Minister, Mark Francois, in a second live in the studio. We'll talk later to a Labour MP as well. I want to hear your views on all of that and the other stories of the day. We'll talk about Louise Haigh, the number 2 in government, convicted fraudster, stripped of her oversight of the fraud office as well. The White House concerned about Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary. The great lover of the environment is on a flight to the Philippines as we speak. Very strange story from a police chief who says quitting Pride was the hardest thing in his 25-year policing career. Well, in that 25-year policing career, 2 officers have been murdered. Another one came very close to being killed by terrorists, yet he says that the hardest thing was withdrawing from a Pride march. Very strange. We'll talk about the BBC spending more on travel despite job cuts as well, and how much they paid Ramesh Ranganathan, a man who is no stranger to a BBC contract. Also, the VAT to be cut from household electricity bills, why it won't work and why we'll save perhaps a little bit of money, but not nearly enough to make things substantially different. I'd love to hear your views on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, you can send me a WhatsApp voice note, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. So Darren Jones was the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. This is the tweet that he put out just earlier today when it came to the VAT and the fact that VAT is coming off electricity bills. It's a simple way for families to save a few quid and to mechanically help to keep inflation a little bit lower. But the digital ID programme was unfunded. The government will have to set out how it will pay for its new policies at the budget, he says. So a parting shot from him. Is there a rift there? Is it perhaps someone who's very unhappy with this? I think it probably is. Well, Miata Fanbulé, who's the Energy Secretary now, the new one, replacing Ed Miliband, who's on his jollies to the Philippines, well, she talked about this morning to Times Radio. This is what she said.
Listen, Darren is a great guy. I've got a lot of time, a lot of respect for him. He was at the heart of government. What I would say is the minister responsible for this policy is that it is thought through. We know the mechanism by which we do it. It is funded, and it was important that we did this on day one to show people that we get that people are under pressure. We get that life feels tough at the moment, and we know that we need to provide people some breathing room, and this is why it was a very important intervention. But be in no doubt, it is a properly worked through intervention. It's properly costed, and it will come into force in October.
So some breathing room, but is the money actually there to pay for it? There's a lot going on with this new government. We'll talk about the Chagos Islands, we'll talk about Russia and the new Defence Secretary Wes Streeting. Is he the right man for the job? I'm not so sure. There's quite a lot to talk about with Mark Francois MP. He's in the studio right now, Shadow Defence Minister. Good evening, Mark. How are you doing?
Good evening. Thanks for having me back on. Yeah, I'm fine.
Great to hear it. When Miata Fanbulé, who's the new Energy Secretary, says that there will be some breathing room and that this is a good policy, can you see where it's funded from? Because Darren Jones, who's just left the government, can't.
Well, it's not funded. And I suspect this is going to be the story of this government, which is you can make lots of promises, but how are you going to pay for them? So let's just look at this. You know, this is day 2. So they announced they're going to reduce VAT on electricity bills. And by the way, you can only do that because we've left the European Union. Just get that point in there, because we control our own VAT in that sense now. OK, and you're going to save just under £1 a week. And they said that they would pay for that by using the money that they would have used to pay for digital ID cards. Now, we've been absolutely opposed to digital ID cards, so here's another U-turn. So it's a U-turn on day 2, and although a welcome one. And then you actually, Darren Jones, former Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, not a Conservative Member of Parliament, says, well, there was never any money there in the budget to pay for these ID cards, so you're not actually saving any money. And the OBR, if you go into the weeds of their documents, confirm that Darren Jones is right. So day 2, Burnham makes a supposedly popular promise, says he's going to pay for it in a particular way. Former Labour big aide to the Prime Minister says, well, there was no money there in the first place.
Yeah.
So I suspect that is going to be a leitmotif for the rest of this government.
Let's just see what the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, has said about this. He was on Instagram talking about cutting energy bills. This is what he said.
I'm cutting taxes on your energy bills. I've said it, Westminster isn't working for people. I know too many families are struggling. It's not good enough. I know we need to give people more breathing space. This is a start. It will save tens of millions of households money, but there's more we can do. Let's bring back hope, everybody. That's what we're starting to do.
Will it bring back hope?
No, because it costs about £850 million in a full tax year. How are they going to pay for it? So the markets are already nervous about this government. I suspect, having read his book, Head North, this is going to turn out perhaps to be the most left-wing government this country's ever seen.
I mean, ever?
I think it's certainly going to be up there.
OK.
And Burnham will make lots of attractive promises, but how are we going to pay for them?
Well,
we've
maxed
out. We've maxed out the credit card.
Yeah.
If they borrow much more money, the bond markets are going to go on strike.
And this is the question. He's talked about ending rough sleeping, 340 million, which is apparently repurposed from within the Ministry of Housing budget. OK, fair enough. If you have that money, great. If you want to end rough sleeping, fill your boots, off you go. That'll be fantastic, although we failed to do it in Manchester. Build 500,000 new council houses and launch a national care service. I mean, the National Care Service could be not quite as big as the NHS, but somewhere in the region of that. I mean, there are loads of people who need care, who are older, who are lots of people are disabled throughout the country as well. I mean, that is a massive ambition, yet he's saying he'll stay within the fiscal rules, but he's talked about flexibility in the fiscal rules. I'm not surprised the markets are nervous, Mark.
Well, I think yesterday the 10-year bond peaked above 5%.
Yep.
So in the medium term, that is unsustainable, right? Our debt interest is already over £100 billion a year. So, as you say, a sort of national care service, which I think he talked about in his book, well, the National Health Service in England now costs very broadly about £200 billion a year.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're saying it's another $200 billion.
Yes, no, it's not.
But
It wouldn't be quite the same.
It's probably tens of billions.
Yes, and where that money comes from.
So where does that come from? He's writing cheques with his mouth that his Treasury can't cash.
How do you think Kemi Badenoch will deal with him, your party leader? Because she's already christened him, nothing but eyelashes on a black T-shirt. He won't come to PMQ's Andy Burnham until September. That'll be the first time she will face him there. Obviously, there'll be a period of adjustment as well. But how do you think she will oppose him? What will she do?
Well, I think it'll be an interesting contest. It will certainly be worth turning up. I think Kemi has developed a style of being very precise, of asking very direct, straight questions, and I think he'll struggle to answer. Now, let me posit you a scenario. He has to do 2 Prime Minister's questions in September. We then rise for the conference recess. He stands up on the last day of the Labour Party conference on the 30th of September. He says, I need a mandate. I'm not going to do what Gordon did. I'm going to go to the country, in which case polling day would be on the 29th of October. That's barely 3 months from now. Now, I'm not saying for definite he's going to do that, but I'm saying I think they're tempted. And that's
why would they be tempted, though? Because, I mean, there are 379 Labour MPs. There would be at least 100 of them, if not more, who would lose their jobs as a result of that election.
It won't be their decision any more than it was a decision of Tory backbench MPs when Theresa May or Rishi went. These decisions in modern politics are taken by 4 people in a locked room. And if you read his book, he might calculate that if he could form a centre-left coalition with the Liberals and the Greens, even if that doesn't produce a Labour majority, that might be enough. I'm not saying, to be clear, Peter, I'm not saying for definite this is what he's going to do, but I understand they are contemplating it. And one of the reasons they're contemplating it is because by then very few people would have had an opportunity to hold him to account.
That's very interesting.
They are clearly, deliberately, the so-called Ming Vase strategy. They're keeping him away from the media. They're keeping him away from being asked difficult questions. It's all pre-prepared press conferences and announcements, and as soon as you start to press the test, they fall apart.
Very interesting points on that. I still don't think it'll be an early election, but I think there has been a bit of a burn and bounce in some of the polls. Very interesting points there. Let's talk about defence, your area. I want to talk about Chagos in a second, but I want to just look at another clip. This is Wes Streeting, the new Defence Secretary. He's been talking today, says he wants to make the UK prepared to win wars as Defence Secretary. Obviously, we've got John Healey, the former Defence Secretary, whose resignation preempted Keir Starmer's own resignation, is now Chancellor. Let's have a look at what Wes Streeting, the new Defence Secretary, has been saying today.
I'm here today to show my commitment to keeping up that momentum from day one. My focus is on maximising our deterrence and ensuring that, should deterrence fail, we're ready to fight and win alongside allies. That means reindustrialisation and building back up our production capacity so we can give our armed forces the kit they need, as well as building and buying British so that we deliver good jobs in communities in every part of our country. It also means pushing the frontier of defence innovation, exactly as we are doing today. And it means keeping our people at the heart of defence. I think one of the enormous strengths of this Prime Minister is, as he leads our country through big domestic and international challenges, he has an unrivalled ability to tell a story about this country, where it is and where he wants to be. And I think the country is crying out for that kind of leadership. They want to see a government that's on their side. They want to see a government that's able to confront big domestic and global challenges. And they want to know that things will get better.
Apparently people should be at the heart of defence. Mark, that's a new one. I mean, people at the heart of defence? Really? Wow. We also want a government that can tell a story. That, I think, I mean, I've interviewed Wes Streeting on a number of occasions. That, I think, is the weakest performance I've ever seen him give. OK, he's only been Defence Secretary for a day, but what do you think? Is he the right man to be Defence Secretary?
Look, John Healey had shadowed the role for a couple of years in opposition. He was then he became a very experienced, and I think it's fair to say well-respected, Defence Secretary, and he resigned on a point of honour, which is fairly rare these days, because he knew that Labour weren't providing enough money for defence. And Al Khan's former Afghanistan veteran, MC, DSO, also resigned on the same day. This is virtually unprecedented to have 2 defence ministers resign simultaneously. They knew that the money wasn't there. Now, Healey's now Chancellor. And Steve Swinsford, the political editor of The Times, is reporting this afternoon that Burnham, the Prime Minister, has told Healey, the new Chancellor, very clearly he will not allow Britain, to spend 3% of GDP on defence, which is what Healey resigned over.
Surely Healey should have made a deal and not accepted the job if he didn't know that, first of all. I don't doubt Steve Swinford at all. He is the man, he is the goat when it comes to political reporting in this country. But, I mean, surely Healey says, yes, I'll become your Chancellor, but we've got to fund it 3%.
You would hope so.
Yes.
So now you've got a defence... Now, I know Wes Streeting, I've known him through mutual friends. He's a very good communicator.
Yeah, agreed.
But that's not enough. And if I may, it's the same problem again. It's how are you going to pay for it? If I've got a moment, let me explain.
Go for it.
So we had this much vaunted defence investment plan, which was supposedly how Labour were going to fund their defence review. The chiefs of staff, the heads of the armed forces, the professional military, asked for £28 billion over the next 4 years, partly to implement the strategic defence review. They were offered £15 billion. It was upped by about £1 billion after Healey and Carnes resigned, right? So then Dan Jarvis becomes the Defence Secretary. Of that £15 billion, £4.7 billion is subject to a further public expenditure review. So it's not really there. It hasn't been agreed by the Treasury. And £10.7 billion has to be found from so-called efficiency savings. So in pub English, that's cuts. They've got to cut MOD spending elsewhere on operations, on training, which the Chief of the Defence Staff specifically warned against doing, in order to find £10.7 billion that they don't give back to the Treasury, they then recycle. So, by my old maths, you add £4.7 billion to £10.7 billion, and that's more than 15. So, in other words, when you go into the weeds of it, and again, this is the absolute weakness of this government, after only 2 days, the numbers don't add up.
Yeah.
Right? There is no new money for defence, despite all the florid claims. And Wes has been put in that he's got very little military experience. He's been put in there as a PR man to try and, you know, paper over the cracks. The Prime Minister has told the Chancellor, who used to be the Defence Secretary, I'm not going to give you the money. Now, Healey resigned once on a point of honour. I'm not suggesting he does it twice, but he will instinctively know that Burnham's turned down what we need to defend this country. So the sky, in all seriousness, Peter, the skies are darkening. Right? The Chief of the General Staff, the head of the British Army, said a year ago we might have to fight the Russians in 2027. The First Sea Lord, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, said it might be 2029. The outgoing Prime Minister said it might be 2030. So we have to rearm. We need to spend
those live shots today as well.
Right, you've got a Russian frigate conducting live firing drills, you know, in the southwestern approaches, where, you know, you've got renewed conflict in Iran, you've got a war in Ukraine. We're not imagining this. So, again, sorry to mention it, but it is instructive. If you read Burnham's book, which he co-wrote with Steve Rotherham, the sort of Metro Mayor of Liverpool, there is barely a word about defence and foreign policy.
And we kind of still don't know. We know about the money, but we don't know any. He hasn't, to my knowledge, as Prime Minister or indeed as leader of the Labour Party or as MP for Makerfield, I don't think he's mentioned the word immigration once.
No,
either.
Look, the first duty of government, above all others, is the defence of the realm. We've got a Prime Minister who I'm not sure really understands that, or at least has never shown much interest in it. And we've got a new Defence Secretary who I don't think really understands it. And even if he does understand it, he hasn't got the money to implement it.
Just a quick one.
Other than that, though, it's all going swimmingly.
It's all marvellous.
And this is day 2.
On an unfunded VAT cut and a care service we can't pay for, and 500,000 homes we can't pay for either. Quick word on the Chagos Islands. What do you think will happen with that? Because I refusal today to say that they'll remain British.
Well, look, if I were Burnham, I would say, well, look, you know, Trump has vetoed it and I'm off the hook. You know, I've inherited this mad proposal. I mean, completely strategically and financially bonkers, to spend £35 billion of British taxpayers' money to rent back a bunch of islands and an airbase that belonged to us in the first place. It looks as if after Trump vetoed it, that had died. And if I were Burnham, I'd say, well, that's one less problem I've got to worry about. Lord Hermer, who was a great advocate for this, has been sacked. If they try and revive this, it is mad. It's absolutely mad. And we can't give away the Chagos Islands because of a 1966 Anglo-American treaty.
I remember you telling me this, yeah.
And we would need Trump's wet signature in order to do that, and there's no sign whatsoever that he's going to give it. So to revive that would be an act of strategic and economic madness.
Thank you, Mark Francois, who is the Shadow Defence Minister. Thanks for joining us in the studio this evening, Mark. Thanks also to Dawn, who says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Dawn. I have a feeling Andy Burnham is using smoke and mirrors to fool the public. If he would just grant new oil and gas licences and slow down net zero, he could impress us. Jackie says, welcome to Burnham's fantasy politics. When he had a hard left economic advisor in Miata Fanboulet who promotes socialism on steroids, then we should all be very afraid. Well, Jackie, she wasn't just his economic advisor, she's now the energy and net zero secretary. Carol in Shoreham by Sea says, just heard that after a Russian warship was seen firing weapons off the coast of Devon, our new Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting, claimed it was irresponsible. What was the point of that comment? These are becoming very dangerous times and crass comments serve absolutely no purpose. What actions are we going to take to protect our country and its citizens? Have a great show, says Carol. Well, thank you for that. Lots more to come. We'll go to the debate desk with Sebastian Salek and Claire Muldoon in just a moment. I'd love your views on everything that we've been talking about with Mark and will be talking about throughout the show. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me every weekend from 6 a.m. for the stories that matter to you. We talk politics, we talk news, we talk entertainment, we talk about everything that affects your life. There's only one place to start your weekend, the home of common sense. Talk Breakfast on Talk. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Friday, Saturday and Sunday here on the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of political figures reacting to the last 24, 36 hours. We're hoping to hear about some of the junior ministers and who will be appointed during the course of this programme. I had one junior minister actually contacting me a bit earlier today to say he thought that around 6 o'clock we'd get an announcement. We haven't. We know about the cabinet. We don't know about those at sub-cabinet level. There are lots and lots of junior ministers who need to be appointed and reappointed, and these reshuffles can take days to sort out. Margaret in Birmingham sent me a lovely message and says, hope you had a nice quiet day after yesterday's merry-go-round. What a day. Well, the merry-go-round continues, Margaret, and we'll get into all of it with our top debate desk panel. Sebastian Salak is with us, the Labour commentator, and Claire Muldoon. Lovely to see you. Well,
and you too, Peter. I'm really well.
And you too, Sebastian, keeping all right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Let's hear a little bit of Nigel Farage's reaction to the government. We've heard from the Prime Minister. We've heard from his Energy Secretary, Miata Fahnbulleh, just appointed yesterday. We've seen a little bit about what Darren Jones has been saying as well. Let's hear from Farage and what his view is on Andy Burnham.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
So Nigel Farage unhappy with the early steps of Andy Burnham. It's interesting as well, I was reading some analysis earlier about the different experience of the ministers in the cabinet, and they're always analysed from, you know, private schools and Oxford and all that kind of stuff. There are 28 cabinet ministers. Only 2 of them have private sector experience. One of them is Andy Burnham himself, the Prime Minister, 3 years in a small publishing business after university, and Louise Haigh, his deputy, 3 years in a middle management role at Aviva, which ended in the fraud conviction for which she left that job, and she is a convicted fraudster, although it's a spent conviction. There are a lot of big questions I have about, I mean, great ambition. Good stuff on the ambition. You know, if you want to end rough sleeping, that's a fantastic thing. I really hope that happens. If you want to build 500,000 new council houses, great. If you want to launch a national care service, that would be a wonderful thing that would help this country. But where's the money coming from? There are just a lot of questions already. Sebastian, what's your reaction to the last day or two of Burnham as Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, very, very early, isn't it? But it's
Yes,
been the start to government that Starmer should have had, in the sense that he's come out with a quick policy on VAT. It's a positive one. It's going to lead to tangible savings for people, however modest. But it's the start, we understand, of a series of policies that are tackling the cost of living. Compare with Starmer, black hole, winter fuel. Not a great start, sets the tone badly, because that's the phase we're in, isn't it? It's about setting the tone for the general public who don't follow politics as close as any of us or anybody listening to this, and are going to vote on that basis one day. And so you want to instill a positive image in their minds to begin with, and I think he's on his way to doing that.
But Darren Jones, who was Starmer's representative on earth as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, saying in a tweet that it's unfunded. He should know.
So the government is saying that it is funded in the sense that after the spending review, basically a lot of departments had to find savings. They were giving some time to find those savings. Some of them haven't found those savings, but that's where the money is going to come from.
It will eventually be funded when it is implemented. Claire, what's your initial vibes on the Burnham vibes?
Right, so my initial vibes on both what Farage has just said and indeed the Burnham vibes coming out before he went into number 10 is that I would actually argue he does have a mandate, because he is now the Labour Party leader and hence he is PM. That is his mandate.
And we don't have a presidential system in this country.
We don't have a presidential system in this country. Also, is bearing in mind, Burnham himself has come out and said he will still keep the manifesto that Starmer won the landslide victory of the 2024 election on. So therefore, it's tick, mandate for me. He wears braces. That's another kind of cordial thing, and he seems to be out of his T-shirts, which is really rather refreshing. I thought it was a really nice touch that he didn't stand behind a podium yesterday, and I think that exercise was in part due to him being a man of the people and a man from the north. So therefore that approachability, it's that trust almost. It was that psychology in, listen to what I'm saying. I'm not reading it off an auto cue. I don't have my notes. This is me. This is what you get. Now, I also said before he became Prime Minister that we would need to wait and see, go through all the machinations, etc., if it is him, and it was him, and we knew that, really. To judge him, one of the first judgment calls we could make was that on which he put his cabinet together. Now, if we look at that, and you have said that quite rightly that Louise Haigh had a job outside in industry, outside of politics, Burnham himself, and who was the other one?
That's it.
That's it, right? 2 people. Now, all for last night, I don't know about you two, but I was like, where's Wes Streeting? Where's Wes Streeting? where is Wes Streeting? What are the girls doing in there? You know, are they having a bit of a party? What are they doing?
There were 14 of them in there at one stage waiting for these announcements to occur. It certainly, there was an hour and 20 minutes when I was on air when they didn't announce a single thing. These things sometimes take time. He's got calls with various leaders.
He knew.
Somebody clearly wasn't too happy with what they were being offered as well.
Well, exactly. And I think I know some of the ones that weren't happy. Because, well, I was delighted that they weren't, you know, put in positions. Yvette Cooper as Health Secretary. Don't see how that one will pay out.
Why not?
Just because there's something quite untrustworthy about Yvette Cooper, I think.
She's been around a long time.
She's been around a lot of...
I don't know what she did at the Home Office, but I do know that she knows politics, she knows the system, she knows how it works.
I just liked Wes Streeting. I've got a bit of a soft spot for him.
Is he the right Defence Secretary?
Well, he worked in Defence in that whole brief beforehand for a couple of years, so he knows a bit about it, and I think that John Healey as Chancellor now will actually help him. I don't think anyone wants Wes Streeting to fail. I don't think as a country we actually want Labour to fall at this hurdle. We've got men like that Faulkner young boy, that mischievous boy whose father tried to get the assisted dying bill through the doors of the House of Lords, Hamish Faulkner.
Oh, you mean the Lord Faulkner? Charlie Faulkner, the older...
Charlie Faulkner tried to do the assisted dying through the gates of the House of Lords, and I think his son will try and get Brexit back through the back door of his new appointment.
Sebastian, let me ask you, I mean, Graham from Bushy says, are the Russians and Putin going to be quaking in their boots with Wes Streeting as our Defence Secretary? It's less about Wes Streeting necessarily,
exactly.
But we have had 3 Defence Secretaries in 5 weeks.
Yeah. I think it's about how they play together. So Wes Streeting, bizarrely, there are some parallels with health. It's a lot of public sector procurement. It's about where you get your goods from, and that's a lot of what the defence industry is about as well. So there's a certain skill set there he can draw upon. He's also got a slightly easier ride in the sense that that Healey left because he wasn't happy with the level of funding. He's now in the Treasury, so he's politically inclined to pull that funding out somewhere, which is going to be easier.
Although that hasn't been guaranteed.
Healey, not Wes Streeting.
Hasn't been guaranteed by Burnham to Healey as Chancellor that we'll get to the 3% that he resigned over. That's another problem with money.
That's true, but it would put Healey in a very difficult position. So what I'm saying is that Streeting will have an ally in Healey in getting the money to be able to do what he needs to do.
OK. And have you any problems with Louise Haigh, a convicted fraudster who's been stripped of her oversight of the fraud office, for example? I mean, have you any problem with her being the second most powerful person in the country?
Not particularly. I mean, like, how long are we going to append the term convicted fraudster to her name? It was a phone more than 10 years ago.
Lots of people call George Cottrell convicted. You know, he was convicted of fraud as well.
That was wire fraud. This was, I forgot I had my phone in my drawer. It's hard to draw a parallel between the two.
Well, I think, you know, it's still convicted of a crime. Sure. You know, there are lots of people talking about whether Nigel Farage was saying certain things 50 years ago. You know, just because things have happened in the past doesn't mean that we can't bring them up.
No, that's very true. But, you know, this is a very open-shut case. We know what the court thought happened. She served her punishment and moved on. And
I still can't get my head around, though, that it went so far, that she actually got a conviction for forgetting to inform the police that her work phone was actually not stolen.
Yeah, and wrote a resignation letter explaining the whole thing.
Yeah, that was when she was 24. And then 2 years later she started working at Parliament, I think.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just think it's a bit of a Morgan McSweeney playbook now, isn't it?
And in the law, there's a test of reasonableness, isn't there, for many situations, and you're asked what would the reasonable person do, what would the man on the Clapham omnibus do, and I think it's perfectly reasonable that any of us might report our phone as stolen and then realise that it was in the drawer. It just doesn't seem like a malicious, willfully horrible act, whereas if you're committing wire fraud in the US, that feels a little bit more we're off to do something bad.
Dee has been in touch from Chesterfield and says when Starmer swept to power because he wasn't a Conservative, the electorate soon found out he had foolish, ill-conceived policies. Now Burnham has swept to power because he wasn't Starmer, and we will soon find out excuse me, that he may be even worse. We may need to vote for the leaders and parties with which we agree and forget tactical voting. It will take years to sort out the anti-nationalist laws anyway, says Dee. Elaine says, can you please ask Mark Francois, I'm sorry, Elaine, he's now gone, how it is that our government always has hundreds of millions and billions for Ukraine and other stuff abroad when they want it, but anything needed in the UK has to be found, cut from something else to be funded. It's especially egregious knowing only a fraction of the money we give to Ukraine goes to where it is supposed to go. Elaine has a point, doesn't she, especially when it comes to overseas aid, which is something that may well go up by more than 10 billion as time goes on. That is something which we've had various disagreements on it last night, for example. Do you think it's right that the overseas aid budget has been put up again when we have a cost of living crisis?
No, absolutely not. And I certainly don't think our overseas budget should include Pakistan either. I think that's an absolute dire state of affairs, and I really don't want them to do it. This all started back, years and years ago, when everyone thought that countries like Africa and even China and India we still give money to, we would actually go, once political landscape had calmed down a bit, Britain would be first in line, cap in hand, to get the resources from these countries that we feel that we've helped, we've enabled to get back up on their feet. The reality is they're not. They're not doing it. They're taking the money. India, for instance, could run rings round our economy. So therefore, I think
kind of is already.
Scrap that and scrap net zero.
The problem with the discussion around aid is that we assume it's purely altruistic, and there are two things to say about this. The first is that if the world is stable, we benefit from that, and the most obvious example is you get fewer refugees and asylum seekers. But the second is a lot of our aid is investment. It's investment in emerging economies that is going to pay off over the years as those countries stabilise and those businesses and organisations
it doesn't pay off, though. History will show that it doesn't pay off, Sebastian.
And one word we haven't heard at all from Andy Burnham since he became MP for Makerfield is the word immigration.
Yes.
Natasha has been in touch and says, I have to disagree with Claire Muldoon. I don't want my Prime Minister to be a man of the people. I want a statesman I can look up to. And Graham says...
I didn't say I wanted him to be. I said that's the impression that he's giving. OK. Who does the divine Ms Muldoon think will be the First Minister to resign from the Burnham Cabinet? We will find out from her and indeed from Sebastian in just a moment. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots to discuss. Who does the divine Miss Muldoon will think will be the First Minister to resign from Burnham's cabinet, says Graham in Bushy. Promise you an answer to that. We'll get it in just a moment after I ask Sebastian Selleck who he thinks the First Minister to resign from Burnham's cabinet will be.
I will lay no maledictions at anyone's door. I'm not going to answer that question because we don't know. We don't know.
I bet Claire has an opinion.
Go on, Claire.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know either, because I think going by facial expressions, Ed Miliband certainly didn't look very happy sitting next to John Healey around the Cabinet Office today. And there's so many randoms I think he's got in there that I don't know if they're going to work together, to gel together.
Yep.
And already, it's hitting the fan over Louise Haig's spent conviction. And there's already part of her portfolio that has been moved back to Pat McFadden.
Well, the government said that decision was made before she was appointed.
I don't think it was, because they knew she was going to appoint him.
Dean in Ealing says, in West London, says, tell Sebastian she did not forget it was in a drawer. An alert was sent when she switched it on. She should be nowhere near government, says Dean. Paul says, ask your guests about the government going to court to block a Freedom of Information request about crime crime figures involving foreign nationals. We did cover that yesterday in some depth, Paul, so maybe you can have a look back on the Tube View or indeed our website to have a look at that. We did quite a lot on that yesterday. Bobby has been in touch as well, says, I know Sebastian said months ago in Talk that it's fair that schoolmates of Farage call him a racist because he may have done a Nazi salute when he was a kid. Please find the clip. Hypocrisy. Well, I think we'll probably leave that one, Bobby, but thank you nonetheless. Certainly, you know, over 30 people said that Nigel Farage said that. He said various things in his youth he shouldn't have said. He has denied it all. And, you know, it happened 50 years ago. There's absolutely no way we're ever going to be able to prove it or not. Lots to discuss when it comes to Brexit as well, because Hamish Faulkner has now taken the job that Nick Thomas-Simons had, attempting to reset our relationship with the EU. What do you think? Andy Burnham's cabinet changes opening the door to a rethink on Brexit, Claire? What's your
it definitely is. I think that is, for me, it's speaking of, you know, closer ties with the EU and a closer reset in terms of completely political. And this is happening, don't forget, over the summer, where it's difficult for British passport holders to get through some customs. In Europe, apart from Greece, Greeks are the only ones that have any common sense, in my view, that have stopped all this nonsense about the fingerprint thing. I think if you hold a sovereign passport, it should override anything. You shouldn't need it, as it's just a money-making excuse for things. And the less, I mean, even though we're going to scrap digital ID, hurrah! Even this whole thing about fingerprints coming through from customs, just stop it. It's complete and utter nonsense. And for people like Hamish Faulkner to take on this role, it's a really important role, and I think he's very pro-European. I think we need to watch. Really.
Sebastian?
We have to be specific about what we mean by closer relationship with Europe. If it's just, you know, let's cosy up, let's make sure we get along with everyone, then great. But anything more than that...
They're the ones that should be cosying up to us.
Well, the whole point is you cosy up to each other, which wasn't much that happened under the Tories, sadly. But if we're talking about a customs union, that's a manifesto break, so we can't go there. There are limits to what can be done without transgressing what Burnham has said he will stick to.
Let's talk about another relationship, well, this time with America. Let's go back to 2018 and Ed Miliband. In fairness, this was 8 years ago, but he said it. Let's hear what Ed Miliband said about Donald Trump.
Well, he actually said on this Piers Morgan interview, apparently, I saw the clip, I think, you know, I'm really popular in Britain. No, you're not. And I think it's very important that people, you know, show, you know, and what is objectionable about him? His racism, his misogyny, his incredibly peculiar relationship with Russia.
And the truth.
And the truth, most of all the truth. And, you know, who he is as a person. I mean, there's a line.
Alistair Campbell talking about anyone's bad relationship with the truth. There's been a car crash, and I'm afraid irony is dead. Our chief diplomat is Ed Miliband, and he is saying those things about Donald Trump. That first meeting is going to be interesting, isn't it, Sebastian?
Yeah. It's become a trope now, hasn't it? Because everyone's had their turn to slag him off, whether it's Twitter or, even worse, on video. Did
slag
they think
who off? Which one?
Trump. Did they think that they were going to come face to face with him in government 8 years ago? Probably not. And let's hope they can smooth over it. Many others have. Lammy had, of course. So let's see. They seem to be more concerned about his love of net zero.
Yes.
Not
what was it Lammy called Trump? He said he was a neo-Nazi loving something or other. It was really quite bad. I can't remember the exact words. But Claire, I mean, the first meeting between Trump and Burnham, actually, who said similarly disobliging things, not I think just quite as harsh, and Ed Miliband, I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Do you know what? Trump's going to take it like a skin, you know, water off a duck's back. He's had worse. He will have worse in the future. And he probably continues to presently have worse thrown at him. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be so much drill, baby, drill as blow, baby, blow in terms of windmills. And I think Trump will not let Miliband's remarks go until he has seen him. He will bring it up and he'll probably make a joke out of them. Yeah. But the joke will have a bit of a punch. And yeah, I think I think he'll be fine as Foreign Secretary. The irony also is not lost in the number of air miles that he'll need to...
He's already on his way to the Philippines.
Exactly.
His carbon footprint's going to be a lot worse than the three of us put together, I would imagine.
I wonder how that will make him feel eating his next bacon sandwich.
Quite a number of people have been in touch when it comes to Louise Haigh and Angela Rayner as well. Leslie says, good evening, Peter, good evening, Leslie. Surely people holding positions such as Louise Haigh and Angela Rayner should be beyond reproach. How can Burnham appoint a fraudster and a tax avoider to be ministers? One has to question his moral compass. I predict he will be gone by December.
I hope not.
Lorraine says, so according to Sebastian Selleck, it's acceptable for a convicted criminal to be in cabinet, a woman proven to have lied to the police and committed fraud. However, Farage was hounded to the point of abuse for weeks by the media, the left and some talk presenters for things he may or may not have said decades ago that were not in any way criminal. The hypocrisy of the left is beyond. We expect those who hold such high office as cabinet members to be beacons of respect, to uphold the law and to have a moral compass. This is a cabinet of corruption. We have a convicted fraudster, a fake solicitor, a tax dodger and a woman who thinks those concerned about rape gangs are dog whistling. Rob as well says, Peter, aren't you going to challenge Sebastian and Louise Haigh? Sebastian is trying to say her crime wasn't serious. Farage's mate was different. He'd argue the other way if it was the other way. Total nonsense from Steb, normally switched off when he's on. There is the point that she didn't make a mistake. She pleaded guilty to fraud by false representation relating to misleading the police.
Yeah.
It's not just a mistake. It doesn't matter that it was years ago, in my opinion. She was dishonest. It's relevant to her character. She is the number 2 person in government, and such a deception would prevent you from having all sorts of other careers. It would prevent you being a police officer, for example. It would prevent you becoming a solicitor. Even if it's a spent conviction, it would prevent you doing some jobs working with children as well, because it would be in a DBS. It is more serious than you say, is it not?
It would certainly prevent you from being a solicitor, probably prevent you from being a doctor, because these are regulated industries with bodies that strike people off. I think we hold our politicians to an incredibly high moral standard in this country, to the point where we almost expect them to stand there and commit political harakiri the second that they're convicted of something. It does matter to me that it was a long time ago. She was 24 years old. It's a very, very long time ago.
You know what you're doing when you're 24 years old. We heard previously, who was it who said I was 30 and I was signing these documents? Josh Simons. I'm sorry, when you're over the age of criminal responsibility, when it comes to fraud, I'm not sure what it is, but you know, you're an adult. You're 24, you're an adult. I'm not saying you're necessarily know everything about the world, but if you commit a crime, that is, you know, you deserve to be held responsible for it. She was held responsible for it, and that's fine, but it does show dishonesty, and to me that matters, because she is a very, very important person in our country, making huge decisions about huge amounts of money.
It shows an instance of dishonesty. Can any of us say that we've ever not been dishonest? I mean, look, if I were done for shoplifting...
I've never defrauded anybody.
No, but look...
I've never lied to the police.
No, but if you were done for shoplifting at 19, for example, does that preclude an entire political career? I don't think it should. We should be allowed to move past these things.
It hasn't prevented her political career. In fact, she's become the second or third most powerful person.
Yes, but there are many people arguing that it should.
They're arguing that we shouldn't forget about it, that we shouldn't simply cast it aside.
Condone it almost.
Well, I don't think Sebastian's condoning it, but it is worth talking about, is it not, Claire?
Well, it clearly is, and I'm talking about condoning it in the sense that it's a spent conviction, and you know we shouldn't. You know, our politicians are only human. But when you tease it back, if there's anyone that was bankrupt, for instance, they can't become a non-exec, they can't become a school governor, they can't become this, that and the next thing, they can't hold a charitable trust, they can't... There's lots of things you can't do, even if that might not have been your fault. But I don't understand why this was taken to the police. Just to me, it seems as if it's not the tip of the iceberg, because we know what the conviction was, but it just seems a bit too serious for what it was. And also on your point that if she is, I mean, she's clearly a very powerful position now in the government, why then would she allow herself to almost bring the government down into disrepute, like she almost did to Starmer's when she was Transport Secretary and then had to... Yeah, she was sacked, but only because it came to light. And she did it in her resignation letter. When I was 25, I got married. That was a year after 24. You have responsibility.
You're over 18.
You know what you're doing.
You have responsibility.
You're over 18.
Yeah, you're an adult. It doesn't matter if you're young.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
We've challenged Sebastian. Let's challenge Claire. Jackie says, has Claire Muldoon been reading a Mills and Boon book on Andy Burnham as a Greater Manchester resident? Don't fall for the nice guy act, says Jackie.
It's his eyelashes, Jackie, that really got me.
Is that it? Have you come over all aflutter?
Yeah. No, I haven't.
Right, lots more to discuss with Sebastian and indeed with Claire, and I want to talk to you as well. Please do give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss. Stay with us.
Some breaking news. 8 men have been charged with rape and child sex offences as part of a grooming gang operation in South Wales. They've been charged with more than 30 offences. According to the CPS, the charges relate to 8 victims who were children.
Well, let me start by giving comment on Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. She's a stupid, idiotic sycophant.
Anne Widdecombe was murdered, the most high-profile murder in Britain for many, many decades. She was murdered because she supported the reform agenda.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David in the Cotswold says, can you ask Sebastian if Ronnie Biggs should make a comeback as Home Secretary? I mean, that train robbery was years ago, wasn't it? Don't think that's what Sebastian is suggesting, perhaps. Paul says, I worked in the security industry, and if I had a fraud conviction, regardless if spent or not, which would show up on a DBS check, the Criminal Records Bureau check, as they used to be called, I'd not be allowed a licence to work, given it's a dishonesty conviction, but it seems you're getting a powerful government job. We will continue to talk about this story, but I want to talk, in just for the moment, on the debate desk about a curious thing that the Deputy Chief Constable of the Police Service in Northern Ireland has said. This guy is called Bobby Singleton, and it was a very strange remark where he talked about withdrawing officers from a Pride parade. He said it was the hardest thing in his 25-year policing career. Within that 25-year policing career, 2 officers have been murdered by dissident Republicans. Another one came very close to losing his life, John Cardwell, and there are others who've been injured in explosions and so on. There've all been all sorts of different, very difficult things that senior officers have dealt with, and there's quite a backlash. We're going to talk about this later on, to what the senior police officer has said. Claire, your take on this?
I mean, it's just tone deaf. After 25 years of service, if telling the police force that you can't go to a Pride March in your uniform is the hardest thing he's ever had to say, come on, that's just ridiculous. As you said, there's been police officers killed, maimed, members of the public killed, maimed, notwithstanding all the come out of the troubles in Northern Ireland. And yet that's the worst thing he's had to communicate. And actually, a former Deputy Director of the National Crime Agency has said, I'm sure Bobby Singleton will reflect on those words and realise they were poorly phrased. But he said the decision was the hardest and most difficult thing I've been involved with in 25 years in policing. This was 3 years ago when the now Deputy Chief Constable led a move by the police service to withdraw, in Northern Ireland, to withdraw from the annual protest on impartiality grounds, sparking an angry backlash from campaigners. It was the first of its kind in the UK, taken in advance of a subsequent High Court ruling in England, which ruled that Northumbria Police's attendance at a parade breached impartiality. This was a very strange thing for him to say, also very tasteless, many people would argue. What do you think, Sebastian?
Yeah, look, I think it's a slightly hyperbolic way of phrasing it. I understand his frustration that runs below it, though. What really annoys me is that LGBT issues have been politicised by people who disagree with them. You have anti-trans...
By people who agree with them.
To a certain extent, but I don't know. I just don't think Pride is a particularly political event in its.
Well, it shouldn't be.
Well, exactly. And its nucleus, it is just, let's be proud to be who we are. And it should not be a political thing. And therefore, I would support police officers taking part.
In their uniforms,
in uniform,
Sebastian?
yeah, I'd be very happy to do that.
Seriously?
Because it is they are not taking a political stance. Saying, I support LGBT people should not be a political thing. But sadly, it's becoming
They're making a very open statement, given the fact of their profession, that they are a gay, lesbian, trans officer. I want my policemen to attend, right, or policewomen to attend an instance in their uniforms. I don't care what their sexuality is. I don't need to know what their sexuality is. They are there to police without fear or favour. And that's what they should be. They don't need it under the flag of pride. But they should be taking pride in themselves, in their training, in their ability to police, in their ability to hold down the law, in the ability to keep people safe. Pride's got pride in the other sense, the way that's been hijacked. No, sorry, none of it.
But this is it. That implies that if you are a policeman and you attend Pride in uniform, you are taking some kind of political position, and you just.
But what are you doing it for then?
Well, because you want to go and celebrate in the same way as if you went to Notting Hill Carnival, you had a little dance there.
No, but you shouldn't be. That's another issue. If they are there to police, then they shouldn't be there to dance.
It's interesting, I think, that there is an implication, rightly or wrongly, that you agree with the conventional trans position, when actually I would argue 90 to 95% of the people in this country are on the J.K. Rowling side of the debate, which I am, which says I don't want to make life more difficult for trans people at all, ever. It's a very difficult thing. But similarly, I support the rights of same-sex spaces, and I don't support people when they say they're a man when they're a woman and they're a woman where they're a man. Were you to take part in a Pride parade now, differently to 10 years ago, it would be as if you're endorsing that. So
I don't think it's necessarily a trans issue. That's not what I've taken from this.
I mean, trans comes into it.
It's the most political part.
It is the most political part, but I don't think Pride, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Pride as an event takes a stance on trans issues. It just says, if you are trans, you should be free to be trans. And that is, the message is so simple to me. That's all it is, and for that reason, I just don't see it as political.
Final word from Claire?
No, just stop it. Just stop it. I wouldn't expect a Church of England Anglican priest to attend with a dog collar. I wouldn't expect a policeman to attend an orange march in his police, as a member of the orange community in his uniform. Keep your uniforms.
I don't think they're meant to be members of the Orange Order if they're members of the police.
Well, I don't know.
But I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah, I absolutely. Listen, thank you both very, very much
very
indeed.
welcome.
Claire Muldoon
It's
there
lovely to
and
be
Sebastian
back.
Selleck, political commentators, both lovely to see you. Steve says UK politics in the 21st century, the Prime Minister has never had a proper job, Cabinet Ministers lie on their CVs, break the law and dodge taxes, and we, the public, wonder why they are incompetent. Darryl in Lincoln says Ed Miliband saying Trump isn't as popular as he thinks in the UK. Well, he's more popular than Ed Miliband. If Mad Ed went head-to-head with Trump for a vote, Ed would quickly realise how unpopular he is and how many people actually do think that Trump is doing a decent job, says Darryl. Well, listen, thank you for that. Lots to discuss in the next hour. We'll be speaking to a Labour MP in just a moment about what the government has done. Peter Dowd, who's the Labour MP for Bootle, will be joining us. I'll be asking him some of the same questions. If you have questions you want me to ask him or comments on the government so far or the show, whatever we're discussing, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Tuesday evening. Another big political day. The dust is settling slightly. We're still waiting to hear who the junior ministers are. That part of the reshuffle continues. But there are lots of questions about Labour, about Andy Burnham and how he is running the country, even on this first full day of his time in Downing Street. There are questions not just from me, but from Darren Jones, the former Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. He was booted out of government yesterday, and he's stuck the boot into Andy Burnham today. We'll go to the MP for Bootle in just a second and ask him what he thinks of it all. We'll also talk about the BBC paying Ramesh Ranganathan, a man who's no stranger to a BBC contract, for a promotional video. We'll talk about all sorts of things this evening. We'll talk about the PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland Deputy Chief Constable, saying withdrawing from a Pride March was the toughest thing he'd done in a 25-year career, which has had lots of people criticising him. Loads to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Should police take part in Pride at all? That's something a lot of people have got in touch with, as they have let me know about Louise Haigh, who's the number 2, the Deputy Prime Minister, essentially First Secretary of State, and her fraud conviction. So much to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Let me know your thoughts here on Talk. Lots of people getting in touch. Jason in the Lake District says if it was Farage who had done what Louise Haigh had done, Sebastian would have been all over it. She's one of the highest positions of power. Bob in Cheltenham says businesses march as allies for their colleagues who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. That's an interesting point there as well. Leslie in Hartley says surely the police are there to tackle crime, not be part of events. Celebrate in your own time, please. And quite a number of different comments on Louise Haigh, which I'll put slightly, some of it anyway, to Peter Dowd, who is the Labour MP for Bootle. I'm delighted that he joins me now. Peter, thank you for joining me. How are you doing this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
I just want to take us back over the course of today. Quite a number of things have happened in regard to the new government and Andy Burnham as the Prime Minister. He talked today about his flagship policy for the first day, cutting energy bills. This is what the new Prime Minister has told us.
I'm cutting taxes on your energy bills. I've said it, Westminster isn't working for people. I know too many families are struggling. It's not good enough. I know we need to give people more breathing space. This is a start. It will save tens of millions of households money, but there's more we can do. Let's bring back hope, everybody. That's what we're starting to do.
And just in the last few minutes, Anna Sarwar, who is the Scottish Labour leader, is going to be a Minister for the Department of Business, Innovation, Science and Trade. He's accepted a place in the House of Lords, so Burnham has made the first Labour figure to call for Starmer to quit. A new minister in that. Peter Dowd, tell me your thoughts on Anna Sarwar becoming a minister in London, despite being the leader in Scotland. Presumably he'll resign from that position.
Well, Andy Burnham did say he wanted to include all the nations, all the regions in governing, listening to what they said. So the fact that he's been appointed as part of the government doesn't come as a surprise to me. It's just a change in direction. Just because we've done things for decades in one way doesn't mean to say we don't change. I just see this as part of the incremental development of those policies.
OK, one person I would imagine is probably not on Anna Sarwar or indeed Andy Burnham's Christmas card list is Darren Jones. And if we just look at this tweet that has been doing the rounds today from Darren Jones about the VAT policy, let me just read it out to people who may not have seen it. Darren Jones, former Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, essentially Starmer's right-hand man. Good news that VAT will be cut on electricity bills. It's a simple way for families to save a few quid and to mechanically help to keep inflation that little bit lower. But the digital ID programme was unfunded. That's where they thought they'd get the money from. Darren Jones continues, the government will have to set out how it will pay for its new policies at the budget. So Peter, I just wonder, with this policy, with the 500,000 council homes, with the ending of rough sleeping, which I really hope succeeds, that's a policy area I used to work on when I worked in government, and similarly, when it comes to all the National Care Service, all these things would cost a huge amount of money. Andy Burnham hasn't outlined where he's going to get it.
I think what the new Prime Minister said is that he will start to outline those, because when you start policy development, you say, what's the policy? What would we like to do? Is the policy going to hold up to scrutiny of itself? You might like the policy, our opponents might like it, the opposition might like it, but is it a policy that can hold up, that we wish to pursue? Yes, it is. Then the next question you have to ask yourself is, the cost. Inevitably, that's going to be the question. What's the cost of that going to be? Haven't worked it out, and then where you're going to get that from. And I think Andy Burnham set out, here's the policy, we're developing the cost and what it might actually, where we will get the money from. So we're at that early stage yet.
Surely it means tax rises, Peter, does it not?
Say that again.
Surely it means tax rises, does it not? Because if the Prime Minister keeps within the fiscal rules, he's not going to be able to borrow any more money.
Well, not necessarily, because the Office for Budget Responsibility, as you know, is the organisation that oversees what the government spends, as the government's position credible, etc. They're talking about a current deficit of about 49 billion, but by 2030-31, there's something like a 30 billion pound surplus. So I don't think you have to look at things today or tomorrow or next week. You have to set them in the context of the development of those policies over the next 3 to 4 years. Planning ahead, and that's what a sensible government does.
But Andy Burnham doesn't have 3 to 4 years, does he? He's got this 10-year plan he's going to tell us about, and we're all looking forward to reading that. But if he's going to convince people, and look, his poll numbers have gone up, and the Labour is doing much better than it was in the polls. There is a Burnham bounce, no doubt about that, not taking a single thing away from that. But the fact is that if he's going to convince people now, and within the next 3 years before which he has to hold an election, he can't just say, well, it's all going to be fine by 2031, can he?
No, I'm just saying that as an example. There may be other things. I'm not privy to other assessments in relation to the budget and the switching around of priorities, whether there be work in relation to tax reliefs or less tax reliefs or more tax reliefs. Look, I'm not privy to that. What I'm trying to say is to set out the process by which you have your policy, what's the cost and where you're going to get it from. And that's what Andy Burnham's doing. And as an example, the digital ID, I mean, Darren Jones referred to that. So he's going to scrap that. So that is, what, £1.8 billion that's not going to be needed. And that could
But the savings hadn't been found just yet, had they?
No,
the money hadn't been found just yet.
I understand, but that is that's within that framework that I talked about.
Okay.
We have a budget of something like £1.4 trillion that we spend every year. So it's the ability within that £1.4 trillion to be potentially flexible. And again, I reiterate, I'm not privy to this. What I'm saying is the structure that you operate on is the policy, the cost, and where you're going to get it from.
OK, we've talked about the policy and the money. Let's talk about some of the personalities, which a lot of our viewers and listeners have views on. Let's just play a clip of what Ed Miliband said about the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in 2018.
Well, he actually said on this Piers Morgan interview, apparently, I saw the clip, I think, I'm really popular in Britain. No, you're not. And I think it's very important that people, show, and what is objectionable about him? His racism, his misogyny, his incredibly peculiar relationship with Russia.
And the truth.
And the truth, most of all the truth. And, who he is as a person. I mean, there's a line.
There's a line, but interestingly, Ed Miliband is Foreign Secretary now. He's going to have to deal with Trump and the Trump administration. Are you confident, Peter Dowd, he can do that after these comments and after his attitude of him and various others within the Labour administration to Donald Trump?
Well, I think he will, because Donald Trump's likes straight-talking people. He doesn't think like things.
Even if they call him a racist and a misogynist?
Well, that's Ed Miliband's view, and he's entitled to his views. And if he has that belief, he will stand up for that. But as I said, it's a question of him as the new Foreign Secretary saying things as they are sometimes. It's not just about the personalities, it's about policy.
But he's the chief diplomat of this country. Peter, if you want a good working relationship with someone, you don't go around calling them a racist and a misogynist, do you?
Yes, but in a sense, it sort of takes two to tango, doesn't it, in that regard, is that you've got a president of the United States who says things and he shoots from the hip and he's unambiguous and he's clear. And lots of people admire him for being clear and unambiguous. Other people don't like that. But that's the nature of politics. That's sometimes the nature of politics, where you make comments, you may be trying to provoke situations. I think Trump does that sometimes, backs away from them. That's almost the nature of the politics that we're in the geopolitical world at the moment. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's the realpolitik. That's where we are.
Are you happy that the most powerful woman in the country, the first Secretary of State, the effective Deputy Prime Minister, is a convicted fraudster?
Look, I'm quite happy, more than happy, with Lou Haig's position within the government. I think that's been looked into. The new Prime Minister's decided to have her back in the cabinet, and I welcome that. But this idea, let's not sort of start to try and make this more than it actually is. I think people are hanging on to the fact that that event happened is now somehow that she's not fit for government is quite frankly ludicrous and clutching at straws, if I'm being honest.
Isn't it the case that when someone shows you that they can be dishonest, when they have a criminal conviction for being dishonest, that you should, essentially accept that and realise who they are the first time round? She is an incredibly powerful person in charge of huge budgets, the whole Prime Minister's agenda. And isn't it reasonable to at least raise that? If this was a Conservative or a Reform UK person, you'd be shouting it from the rooftops, would you not?
Well, I think people have already shouted it from the rooftops, and it's how you react and respond to a particular situation and an event that happened at the time, which was over 10 years ago. And she stood down at the time. She's back in. I'm not trying to sort of undermine or demean the issue at hand, but I'm trying to say, let's get it into some sort of context, shall we? Let's really try and contextualise it. And you know what? I'm not going to go down the path comparing it with other politicians and allegations made against this politician or that politician.
But it's not an allegation, though. It's a conviction. And when it comes to Angela Rayner, for example, her transgression was much more recent. You talked about Louise Haigh being more than 10 years ago. I mean, with Angela Rayner, we're talking about months.
Well, the thing at the end of the day, the so-called transgression was sorted out with the department who's supposed to sort it out.
It was a transgression. She should have paid the tax and didn't.
I think the issue at the end of the day, I think the word you used is transgression, and you have to forgive me. I don't know the details of this, and there's no reason why I would know the details of it, but let's try and get it into some sort of context.
Peter, I do know the details of it, and it was a transgression. She should have paid the tax, and she didn't. She was not cleared. What happened was that they said you should have paid the tax. She then paid the tax, and then it was done. They could have fined her. They could have taken things further. They didn't, but it was a transgression. I'm happy with that language.
Look, I didn't deny it wasn't a transgression. I was saying that they decided not to take any further action under the payment for back. Let's get it into some sort of perspective. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Let's get it into perspective.
I mean, we can get into perspective, but we've just had someone who resigned over that. We had someone who resigned over their fraud conviction. They've rejoined the government. It's as if nothing has happened and everybody's fine with that. I can tell you right now, I'm not sitting here in moral judgment of anybody. My viewers and listeners are, though, and they're saying that they don't want these people in government.
Well, I completely respect your listeners' views, and if they don't like that, they can express their views at the ballot box, and they no doubt will. So when we have another election, they're perfectly entitled, as my constituents are, to go and say, I don't like him for this reason, that reason, the other reason, I don't like him for this, and they can go and vote against me. They're perfectly entitled to do that. We live in a democracy which allows us to do that.
But we haven't had a vote for Andy Burnham for a manifesto that he has stood on, although the people of Makerfield certainly have. Should there be an early general election? Would you welcome that?
I don't think so, because, when I did politics at university, and I remember this question being asked before. For example, prime ministers. I don't think Neville Chamberlain had to have an election when he became the prime minister. Winston Churchill certainly didn't have an election when he became the prime minister in the war. Harold Macmillan didn't have an election when he became the prime minister, etc., etc. James Callan didn't have an election. Liz Truss didn't have one. Rishi Sunak didn't have one. To begin with, I don't think, as I recall, Boris Johnson having one till the 2019, but became the prime minister before that. So this idea that you have to have a general election because the prime minister's changed, in the British system, that has never happened, and there've been a number of prime ministers who haven't had to do it.
Well, you're absolutely accurate in what you say there, Peter. Are you expecting the phone to ring this evening with a ministerial appointment?
But no, I'm not expecting it at all, and that's no, I'm not. No.
What do you think the people in Bootle want from Andy Burnham's government? What would you, if they're talking to you over the summer? I know the summer recess. It's not a holiday; it's a recess. I'm sure you'll still be working hard for your constituents.
Yes.
When you're talking to them, what will you be sort of selling to them about Andy Burnham? What do they say they want from a Burnham administration?
Well, I was actually out. I've been out since I was out on over the weekend. I think what they're looking forward to is the stuff that Andy Burnham talked about. Hope. I think you have to give people hope. And I think the statement that he made today, this announcement in relation to the VAT, this 6-month, if you're on free cut in VAT on energy for domestic users, is part of that. It's a statement of intent. I hope that's the statement of intent. And that's what my constituents want. They want a little bit of hope linked in with a bit of action. And that's what was delivered today. And I welcome that.
And Peter, just before you go, can I wish you a good summer? And I do hope you do take a holiday. And there are lots of people, including some of my viewers and listeners, who don't think politicians should take holidays. I want politicians to be rested. I want them to have 8 hours sleep a night. I want them to have good family relationships. I want them to talk to a lot of people outside politics who have nothing to do about politics. I want them to take holidays. I want them to be as normal as everybody else. And if anybody tells you you shouldn't take a holiday, I think they're wrong. So I wish you a good summer, and thank you for joining me on the programme this evening, Peter.
Thank you.
That's Peter Dowd there, who is the Labour MP for Bootle. We'll get your views on what he said in just a second. Lots of them coming in. Jay says the only reason digital ID has been dropped is to hide the millions of illegals. Keith in Nottingham, before the fall of the Eastern Bloc, I understand that a suitcase of Eastern German marks would probably get you a loaf of bread. With Burnham and his spending plans, the country will be printing money as if it's going out of fashion. We are in for 3 years of absolute turmoil. Trevor in Harrow says, will Louise Haigh be able to enter the US if she ever needed to go there in official government business? I thought even if the conviction was spent, you still have to declare it. I don't know when it comes to immigration law. I do know I went to America with someone once who had was given a caution as a 16-year-old, and he got in, and it was all right, certainly. But certainly you would have to declare that on the form, and US immigration is certainly pretty stringent, it must be said. Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary for War in Washington, he has been interrupted by protesters at a Senate hearing over the Iran war. He is speaking in, this is just breaking news at the moment, he was speaking in Washington to ask the Senate for more money for the war in Iran. And he was testifying there, and that was interrupted by protesters, which is something that many politicians need to deal with from time to time. Lots to discuss. We'll take your calls in just a second. If you want to get on the air, please do give me a ring. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Some breaking news. 8 men have been charged with rape and child sex offences as part of a grooming gang operation in South Wales. Been charged with more than 30 offences. According to the CPS, the charges relate to 8 victims who were children.
Well, let me start by giving comment on Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall. She's a stupid, idiotic sycophant.
Anne Widdecombe was murdered, the most high-profile murder in Britain for many, many decades. She was murdered because she supported the reform agenda.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The first one to resign was Rachel Reeves. She was offered defence, says Alex in Solihull. We don't actually know if she was offered defence. I think she was actually offered education. That's been some of the reporting as well. Who knows if that's true? It'll all come out at some stage, but certainly she chose not to take that role. Richard in Northampton says, I'm getting the feeling Labour are going to slowly strangle and ruin this country so that when Farage is voted in by the British public, it will be extremely hard to revive the country and the economy. In other words, they're going to bankrupt the country and booby-trap the economy. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch online as well. Quite a number of messages coming through. Rotten Lass, who really doesn't like Sebastian Salek, says, well done, you've just said the magic switch-off word, Sebastian Salek. Hopefully you're now back with us, Rotten Lass. Les Calderwood says you were correct about Hermer, his political toast. Yes, no tears from me on Lord Hermer not being Attorney General or in the government anymore, I can happily say. Les, well, I don't want anybody to lose their job. That's not a nice thing, but Lord Hermer, I'm afraid, not a fan, never have been, of his politics. What do you make of Bryant in the Northern Ireland office? Will his theatrical nature work? Les, I actually spoke about this quite extensively on a BBC programme this afternoon, Talk Back on BBC Radio Ulster, so you might want to go after this programme after 10 and have a listen there. But no, Chris Bryant, I think, will... I mean, I wish him well. I want him to be a good Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, but I don't think he will do a good job. I think he will be too outspoken and too abrasive, and a lot of that job is to be a diplomat, which I don't think he is, but I wish him well. John says, well done, Peter, for exposing the utter hypocrisy of your socialist commentators. Absolutely unbelievable. And Bella says, Arna Sarwar, who is now going to be in the Lords and is going to be a minister in the business department, has just had Labour's worst ever result. He's lost his seat by 5,000. Scottish voters could not have been more explicit in that they didn't want Anna Sarwar in government. A sickeningly anti-democratic move, says that person. Let's go to the phones. Jill is in Cornwall and is waiting. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say this evening?
Oh, gosh, where do we start, Peter? Honestly, I mean, well, Rachel Reeves needn't worry because she could always be the tea lady. You know,
or working customer complaints, which she has done before. There's nothing wrong with working customer complaints, but it doesn't qualify you to be Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Do you know what? I cannot believe that we have got a government that is being... it's a government with criminals in it, really. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Well, we have a convicted fraudster who's the most powerful woman in the country. And now, two of my guests, one Labour MP, one former Labour councillor, have said nothing to see here. It was all years ago. You know, it's all. She lost her job over it previously. It's all fine. Is it all fine, Jill?
No, it's not. For goodness sake, no, it's not. I'm sorry, but to have someone who has broken the law and got a criminal record for her behaviour and everything else, no, it's not. I'm not happy to think that we're paying her a wage from people that have worked really hard to just survive this country at the moment. And for Andy Burnham to think that, for the Labour Party to think that it's all right for them to sort of win an election for whatever reason, and then we end up with a government that do nothing for the things that are really going wrong with this country.
Although they are today saying that you'll get VAT off your energy bill. Do you think that will help you, Jill? Do you think that's a good thing that the government's doing?
Well, it's not just the only thing, is it? To get that down, I mean...
It's only day one, Jill. Give them a chance, no?
No, I'm sorry. Peter. As much as I think that possibly there will be people out there who will say, yeah, let's give them a chance. What have they done so far? What have they done so far?
Well, they've said they're going to give you money back on your energy bill, and they've appointed a cabinet. Isn't that quite enough to be getting on with for the first 24 hours?
Well, how long have they been in power, the Labour Party?
Yeah, it's a fair point. They've had a couple of years, yeah.
This is not what the people who voted Labour. Maybe it's a plus, maybe their pluses, yes. But what they voted for with Labour and Keir Starmer, they didn't get anything from him when he was in power. He got more out of it than anyone else, more holidays and goodness knows what. We're giving enough money away to other countries. It isn't that I am against Ukraine. I'm really supportive of them and everything else. But when it starts to bleed the people of this country to struggle because of the money that we're giving away and putting away in other countries and other things, then I'm sorry, It's very difficult to be supportive. And we should be entitled to an election as to whether or not we want this party with the things that they're planning to do, whether we want them in power.
Okay.
And to think that Ed Miliband is the Foreign Secretary, I mean, he's going to be, him and Donald Trump are going to be a right blinking pair. That's all I can say.
I think you're absolutely right, Jill. It'll be fascinating to see how they get on, or if they do. That's Jill in Cornwall there. David in the Cotswolds says, great show, Peter, as always. Thank you, David. Burnham hasn't mentioned illegal immigration, reforming the bloated and overspent benefit system, or how on earth he will pretend to defend the realm. He's hoping the number 10 decorator has very thick wallpaper, as they need to paper over the very obvious cracks. Clayton in Dartford says, when does Sebastian think the foreign aid and the taxpayer is dishing out will pay dividends? The 25th century, perhaps, says Clayton. And one other person who has thoughts on Sebastian, quite a divisive character this evening, is Georgina, who has given me a ring from London. You're very welcome to the programme, Georgina. What would you like to say?
Well, I wish I'd have been in the studio with you while Sebastian was on, Peter, because
I think you might have wrung his neck, Georgina. I would have had to separate you.
Always he tries to defend the indefensible. You know, he's just, honestly, he's living on a different planet, Peter. I mean, I've been watching Andy Burnham, All Things to All Men, but he's no different than Keir Starmer. In fact, he's more to the left, more Corbynist than Starmer ever was. Regardless of Burnham's likability, the man has been plucked from relative, political obscurity as a mayor of Manchester and shoehorned into the top job of British government as the Prime Minister of our United Kingdom without
what do you make of what he's
democratic vote.
What do you make of what he's done though on VAT? Could that be something that you'd be happy with on energy bills? Jason in the Lake District has said they could remove the standing charge on utility bills. That would make more sense than the VAT charge, but ideally both if they're really serious. Do you think that the energy bill move today will help you in some way? Could that be a positive thing the government's done?
No, not really. 86 pence off your VAT, off your electricity bill, isn't going to fix the cost of living crisis, is it? Burnham said nothing about the major problems that our country faces, Peter, problems such as immigration and defence, but he's only promised that under his premiership the United Kingdom and population will improve. But he hasn't said where the money's coming from to make these improvements. But we know where it's coming from. It's coming from us, the taxpayer. I mean, he's got this new cabinet, a hasty reshuffle of old Labour names placed in different jobs, but all he's done is place people who were useless in their previous positions into new job descriptions. Some of them are of a very questionable character, and it's going to be another Labour disaster. As it stands, we now have what I would call a Labour political souffle that's all puffed up with promises, but the moment the fork hits it, Peter, it's going to deflate to find there's nothing contained inside. And I wouldn't be surprised if Berman wasn't Prime Minister by Christmas.
Thank you, Georgina. The question is, it could be a souffle and fall apart, but could it simultaneously be delicious? We will talk to the former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, former Chief Executive of Energy UK, the trade association for the energy industry, Angela Knight. If she doesn't know what's going on with energy bills, no one will. We'll see what she has to say in just a second. Thanks for all your comments. Still coming in thick and fast. We'll take plenty more calls in the second half of the show. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch. Dawn says we now have lots of northern MPs in the Cabinet. What's the betting? Burnham holds some of the Cabinet meetings up north. I think he will do that, probably at number 10 north. Richard in Leicester says, I like it when Sebastian comes on. It reminds me just how bad Labour is. He tries his hardest to justify how bad Labour really is. Excuses, excuses. The word on the street, according to Dean in Ealing in West London, is that McSweeney is going to blow Hague up with more stuff. Burnham and Hague plotted for a year. What goes around comes around. This won't be pretty, and I can't wait, says Dean. Interesting one there. I hadn't heard that, must be said, but yes, there are various people who will be unhappy about Louise Haig's return to government. On the Pride issue, one person says, please don't use my name, and I will respect that. I don't know who this bloke is, but as a gay man, I can tell you without a doubt that Pride is a massively political event, pushing the agenda of swivel-eyed, loony leftist extremists filled with lecturing and demand that the dolls, i.e. men who say they're women, are seen as more important than women. So thank you to that person for that, whose anonymity I am happy to respect. Bit of breaking news, 2 of PC Harper's killers are set for early release. That was the constable, I'm fairly sure, at Parliament who was murdered, if I remember correctly. No, that's not the case, sorry. The pair jailed for the crime in which the officer was dragged for a mile behind his car, among those eligible to be freed under Labour's early release scheme designed to tackle overcrowding. This is a bit of breaking news. Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole, who were jailed for 13 years in 2020, so 6 years ago, from the manslaughter of Harper, are now eligible to be freed just halfway through their sentences under the Ministry of Justice's early release scheme. So we'll get more information on that, and we'll talk about that more as the programme goes on. I want to speak now about this energy policy and about the relief that is being given on VAT. No better woman, no better man, no better person to speak to than Angela Knight, who was Economic Secretary of the Treasury, also the former Chief Executive of Energy UK, which is the trade association for the energy industry. Angela, thank you for joining me. Looks like a beautiful evening where you are. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of this? Because we're told it's unfunded. We're told it's only going to be 86p a month for the average family. What do you make of it?
I think it's an early stake in the sand that Burnham has placed to say that I understand that energy is got too high. I understand people's concerns on cost of living. Now, you know, it might be 80-odd-p a month. It might be £45 a year maximum. Whatever it is, it's not a lot. So it seems to me that this has done 2 things. First of all, you know, he's said, I'm concerned, and here, this is me showing it, which politically is probably not a bad idea. But the other thing that it just flagged up, and this is a real warning point, I think, is that it's not funded. And he said, oh, well, we'll take it from the identity programme that we were going to do.
Oh, Angela, do we have you?
That's not funded either.
We're just having a bit of a problem with the line there. We'll try and get Angela Knight back on the line with a better line, and I'll just bring you an update, a bit more detail about the killers of PC Harper. They were jailed for the crime in which an officer was dragged for a mile behind a car. They're now eligible to be freed under Labour's early release scheme designed to tackle overcrowding. Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole were jailed for 13 years in 2020 for the manslaughter of PC Harper, are now eligible to be freed just halfway through their sentences under the Ministry of Justice early release scheme. The pair were 17 at the time, were in the car that dragged PC Harper for more than a mile along country roads. Harper had gone to investigate the theft of a quad bike when Bowers and Cole tried to escape in a car driven by the third killer, Henry Long, who is apparently not eligible for early release. So this is just some of the detail that is coming out. This very controversial policy of letting people out early because the prisons are so full. Harper sustained serious injuries. He died on the road. It was an absolutely dreadful crime. And here we are. I mean, there are so many different people who have done terrible things who are eligible for that early release scheme. We will, I think we should maybe go to the phones in a second. Just we're trying to get Angela Knight back. Let me read out a couple more messages from you, including from Dave in Kent. He says, can you ask that upcoming Labour MP why Burnham thinks it's okay to have a convicted fraudster and tax evader in his cabinet, but Nigel's getting hounded over a $5 million donation before he was an MP, which he didn't have to declare. He argues that, certainly others argue he should have declared it, but Dave, I was very happy to ask that question, or a version of that question anyway. Another Dave's been in touch on Andy Burnham on energy bills. He can't help us with anything. After all, it's not his money, it's taxpayers' money, so we're paying in the end. Smell the coffee, people. Dawn says the fact that Labour MP is defending Louise Haig's criminal record tells us all we need to know, talking about my interview with Peter Dowd there a little bit earlier on. And Samantha has said, just to remind you, the average age of the soldier in Vietnam who died was 19. In Falklands, in World War II it was 22. In the Falklands it was 21. So you can die from your country, but at 24 you get a slap on the wrist, then you have a taxpayer-funded top number 2 in the country. And she never declared what she should have. Let's see what these people say when a Reform member with a history is exposed, says Samantha. Well, Samantha, that's a very good point, and I think we're kind of seeing it already, actually, when it comes to Nigel Farage and when it comes to George Cottrell and other people. Caroline is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Caroline, you're very welcome to the programme. What's on your mind this evening?
Hi, Peter. Firstly, it's great the information you found out when the other day, you know, when the Messiah became the PM. Okay, so I agree with virtually everything that your previous caller Jill said. Isn't it interesting how 1 minute you can be the health secretary, then you can be a foreign secretary, then you can be an education secretary. The fact is, none of them know what they're doing. They're all being told what to do. They have no experience of anything, and it's wrong. They go on about Farage with his $5 million. I'm not saying it was right or anything. Yep. We have officially got 2 convicted criminals in our parliament. It is so.
I think it's just one. I don't think the other one was convicted. But Caroline, I tell you what, Angela Knight is back. I promise you, Caroline will give you a ring back in before 9 o'clock. Would that be all right if we continue the conversation then?
Oh, please, as long as you give me back.
We will definitely give you a ring back. We'll promise you'll give you a ring back by 9 o'clock. Top team behind the glass. Hold me to that. Let's make sure we get Caroline back on the line by 9. But Angela Knight is back. We have re-established the connection. Delighted to have you back. Angela, interesting message from Jason in the Lake District who says they could remove the standing charge on utility bills. That would make more sense than the VAT charge, but ideally both if they're really serious. How serious do you think they are in your estimation when it comes to energy bills?
Yes, well, I think that's absolutely right. The standing charge, I mean, not only is it something that is quite big, but of course you would pay a standing charge just to be connected. So you could use not even 1 unit of energy and you'd still pay your standing charge, whereas VAT, of course, is proportionate to how much you use. And I think that by raising that point, your listener, your watcher, has highlighted some of the many inconsistencies in our energy policy. So as I said earlier, you know, doing the VAT, well, that's one thing. It's a flag in the sand. But there are many other things about energy policy that need to be addressed if we're going to have something that's affordable, sustainable, secure, and all the rest of it in this country. And a lot of that means unwinding what the Labour Party has done to date. The ban on saying, well, you can't get any more oil and gas out of the North Sea, but you can bring it in from Qatar or whatever, is ridiculous. It makes no sense. The idea that if you say, well, we're going to have to use gas for the long term, somehow you are a climate denier, is rubbish.
The environment doesn't know where the gas is extracted from.
Absolutely,
you know, the ozone layer isn't thinking, well, hold on a second, let's accept man-made climate change exists, which I do. You know, we're not. If you're going to extract gas, you're going to extract oil, which I think we need to do. They're not going to say, well, OK, well, it's Qatar and we're actually got loads of miles that we're bringing it in. It doesn't matter where it's from. We may as well extract our own because it's ours and we can grant those licences.
And that does existing jobs and new jobs, and it puts more tax into the public coffers as well. But the other thing that if you go home and you say, right, I'm just going to have a look at my energy bill, my gas and electricity bill, you'll find that more or less than half of your bill is actually the gas and the electricity. And if you picked up your electricity only bill, you'd find it's less than a third. That says to you that there's a lot more about that bill and what's added on the bill than just gas and just electricity. And the key issue here, to my mind, is the question of what do you put on the bill and what you don't. Now, the pipes and wires that bring it all to our house, I think that's fine. But when you start putting on the environmental policies, you have to say to yourself, well, hang on, is this right that the consumer should pay? And then if you hop across to industry, and it's worth remembering that industry are the principal users of electricity in this country, you then have to say, well, hang on, why is it that we are charging our industry more in electricity than almost any other developed country? And we are currently losing industries as a consequence. And a lot of that is about the add-ons to that industry bill, but it's also, and I appreciate it's a bit late at night, it's how we calculate the cost of the wholesale price of electricity, which is in our hands. Because, you know, common sense says where electricity is generated by gas, it's generated by nuclear, it's generated by solar, it's generated by wind, and we bring it in from the continent. Okay, so what's your price? Well, the pricing is set every half hour, but it's not set on the basis of, you know, some comes from here and some comes from there. The last generator that is required to meet the demand any half hour actually sets the price of that whole pool. And the last generator required would be always the more expensive.
Yeah.
So that brings up the price of the pool. And you can take more in tax off somebody who's a cheap electricity provider like an old nuclear and say, well, I've got it back that way. That does nothing for the wholesale price of electricity. And that says how much you pay, how much that factory down the road pays, and addressing some of these deep technicals is massively important. And that should be part of what they do next.
Do they have the appetite when you're thinking of next steps, when you're thinking about what they really want to do to try to get this cost of living crisis under control? Because we had so many warm words. Look, it's a government that is not 36 hours old. You know, let's give them a chance perhaps. But in your expert view, do you think they have the appetite for true reform that could actually make people's lives better when it comes to energy?
From what I've seen so far and heard so far, and that is in the run-up to this change in leadership, I think the answer is possibly in social areas, and particularly the social services, the answer could be yes. But in everything else, I think the answer is probably no. They might do a bit more of the North Sea because there is some wiggle room. Again, it's technical, but there's some wiggle room between, you know, no more licenses and can we do a bit more drilling? And they might exercise that wiggle room. But I think what has been extraordinarily noticeable is that they've been tin-eared about energy policy, and they're living with a metropolitan policy rather than a reality policy. And it is the reality of what we do as a country for jobs, what we do as people, what we do as industry, which is immensely important. Electricity and gas are vital for our lives. Let's get it at an affordable price, at a sensible price, and ditch some of these theories whilst recognizing that we do have to pay attention to climate and to sustainability and security.
Angela, thank you. As always, Angela Knight there. She was a Treasury Minister, then she was Chief Executive of Energy UK, which is the trade association for the energy industry. She knows of what she speaks. Let's just give you a little bit of an update on PC Andrew Harper. And of course, he died when he suffered catastrophic injuries as his ankles got caught in a strap attached to a car in Berkshire. His widow, Lissy, said she was in a lost and endless world after her husband was killed in the line of duty a month after their wedding day. And 13-year sentences were given to Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole. Jurors heard how he was dragged for more than a mile along a country lane after he and a colleague responded to reports of a quad bike theft. Absolutely dreadful. And now these two scumbags are set for early release. The pair behind it, Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole, are now eligible to be freed just halfway through their sentences under Ministry of Justice's early release scheme. The new Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, will preside over that. Lots more to discuss on that. Will I speak to Caroline also before the top of the hour, as promised. We'll also speak to Alex Dyke, the former BBC presenter, because there are two stories I'm interested in. One is that the BBC is to spend more on travel despite all the job cuts they're making. And also Ramesh Ranganathan, the absolutely ubiquitous comic, paid to front the BBC's shameless licence fee advert. We'll show you a little bit of that and ask if it was worth it. Stay with us here on Talk.
Let's get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
Disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
Yeah, more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We've spoken to Caroline. We're going to get her back on, not before 9, but a little bit later on. She's happy with that. I promise I will speak to her by the end of the programme. She's happy with going a little bit later on because we're running behind schedule because I talk too much. But Alex Dyke is with us now, the former BBC presenter. And Alex, there's a couple of very interesting stories that we're going to talk about. You're very welcome to the programme this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing fine, Peter. I'll talk really quickly so you can squeeze everybody in.
Well, you've got 11 minutes. Let's have a look at Ramesh Ranganathan, a man, really we haven't seen very much of him apart from every single programme that he's on. I think there are quite literally dozens of programmes that he's on. Anyway, they're asking what the BBC has ever done for us, and this is the propaganda they've come up with.
Yes, there are shows I wouldn't dare to belittle. Like a record-breaking drama about a hospital. What are we looking at?
He's taken a serious tumble.
But while you're giving your suspect the 3rd degree...
That's not a chicken.
You again? Ask them, what has the BBC ever done for me? Yeah, all right, mate.
Yeah. Alex, what do you make of that?
Well, it's a mess, Peter. The first thing I'd say, it's 3 minutes 45 seconds long. And you and I know, being in media, it's far, far, far too long. It's too bitty. Now, the original idea, I'm sure you'll remember, came from Monty Python's Life of Brian. John Cleese in the bar saying, what have the Romans ever done for us? And someone shouts out, the roads. Oh, yeah, they've done the roads, but apart from the roads, the drains. Right, so that's where it came from. And in 1985, John Cleese made a version of it, sat in a pub, or stood against a bar in a pub, saying, I've just paid £58 for my licence fee, because that's how much it costs then. What have the BBC ever given me for that? And someone says, well, good drama. And it is full, Peter, absolutely brimming with top BBC talent. And if you played that one side by side with that pathetic, jumbly mess that they've done now, you'll see how far the BBC has fallen.
But it's interesting they feel they have to make this, Alex, because we have 500,000 people this year alone who've decided that they don't want to pay their licence fee. They've opted out of the BBC. They've opted out of live television. we've got a situation where the BBC is saying it's going to spend more on travel. They're making a lot of people redundant. They're cutting a lot of jobs, including some very, very good people. I know some friends of mine who work there who are under the threat of redundancy at the moment. And listen, we may not all be totally happy with everything the BBC broadcasts, but I think it does do some good stuff. And I know some good people who work for it. So we're in a situation where the media is changing. It has been changing for years and years and years. We're in a situation where people are deciding what they're voting with their feet. They're voting with their remote control and not tuning into BBC ideas. I mean, the licence fee itself is something that they need to think very, very clearly about. It's about what the BBC does, but it's also the mechanism by how it's funded, isn't it?
Yes, and there's no doubt that there are some brilliant, brilliant programmes that the BBC still do, but there's not the need for the BBC that there was, because you can get children's programmes everywhere now. Dozens and dozens of channels can fill the needs that once only the BBC and ITV could fill. And the BBC has got to wake up, Peter, and smell the coffee. And I've made some notes for you. Well, I've made a brief note for you. Jonathan Munro, the interim chief exec, spent 36 grand on flights. One of those flights was to New York, and it cost £8,000 return. So he wasn't in cattle class, was he?
He certainly wasn't. I mean, I have literally, not recently, but I've literally gone return to New York for less than £500.
Yeah.
I mean, £8,000 is a lot of money.
He was turning left, wasn't he, when he got on that plane? Or was he turning right? I think he was turning right. And then another flight for £5 grand to Washington. So these numbers are crazy. I mean, what was it? 238 million on hotels and taxis. Nobody in the commercial sector would do that. Netflix wouldn't do that. Sky wouldn't do that. It's absolutely crazy, especially with Zoom these days. And you know, Peter, and I know, because we've been at the BBC, that if they can send 5 journalists to cover the same story instead of one, they will.
It is bizarre when that happens. And I remember I was with another broadcaster, actually, and one of the photographers at a particular news event said, look at how many people they're sending. And there were something like 5 or 6 different journalists from the BBC covering the same story. It is astonishing. What system do you think would work? What idea or what system do you think is the way forward for the BBC? And what should the BBC be? Because even in that video, I saw a little bit more of it just before it came on air. They had dancers from Strictly Come Dancing, for example, saying, you know, the BBC has done Strictly Come Dancing. I mean, that's a very, very successful, very commercial programme that other broadcasters would do. Other broadcasters would do something like The Apprentice. We've seen other broadcasters do that. We've seen other broadcasters do something like The Traitors, for example, which are all good BBC programmes that I enjoy watching. Well, not Strictly Come Dancing, but the other two. And this thought that somehow the BBC is giving that content that wouldn't be there otherwise, I think is just not realistic.
No, and maybe the BBC should be making those programmes, as far as the production's concerned, and selling them on. I mean, they were very, very successful with Top Gear back in the day with Jeremy Clarkson and co. That was the BBC's most sold, most profitable programme ever. And maybe they should be doing more production. But we need to, they're like the royal family, Peter. We need to cut it right back to the bare bone. Then people would respect the BBC. They might fall in love with it again, and they may be happy to pay some subscription. But I think the way forward for the BBC, and I was in a BBC meeting and I asked this question, why don't you put adverts on the BBC? And they said, well, we couldn't be impartial. Well, ITV have been doing ITN News for years and years and years.
Yeah, that's just not true. And also the World Service, for example, does have ads. If you watch BBC World News in any other country, they have ads in that, and the BBC remains, well, is meant to be impartial. And actually, that's the point that someone on text has put in and says neutrality is what they have lost. That is the reason I don't pay. There's a difference, obviously, between neutrality and impartiality. But, I mean, I'll be totally honest, I saw Jeremy Bowen yesterday in Downing Street when I was reporting for Talk from there. He walked past me and I had an almost sort of physical reaction because he's so biased, in my view. He may dispute this, but he's so biased on the Middle East. And I think the problem is that there's some things that the BBC does. It's a huge organisation. There's some things the BBC does really well, and other bits that it just doesn't do well at all. And I would say a lot of their foreign coverage, I mean, I defy anybody to watch the BBC and say they are impartial on the Middle East. I defy anybody to watch BBC coverage of Donald Trump and say that they are scrupulously impartial when it comes to Donald Trump. I just don't think that's realistic.
No, I heard them on Radio 4 the other day talking very disrespectfully about Donald Trump, and I think, fine, you don't like him, but if that was anybody else, you wouldn't be, unless it was Nigel Farage, of course, you wouldn't be talking about them like that. Why is it okay for the BBC to cherry pick the people they're not impartial about? And just before, I'm sure you're going to wrap up in a minute because I know you're tight for time, so just before you go, Peter, if I could quickly say this. The other day when I was listening to BBC Radio 4, they are running an ad for the licence fee, but it's misleading. They say, and don't forget, a television licence lets you watch every channel. Well, that is misleading because actually it's all about the BBC. The money doesn't go to Channel 4 and ITV and Sky.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point that you make, and thank you for it. That's Alex Dyke there, former BBC presenter. What do you make of what he said? 0344 499 1000. Ernie's been in touch and says, I decided to have a day off and spend the day at the beach with my family. I drove through Barry Island town centre. I haven't been there for years. It was so depressing. All the shops were boarded up and covered in graffiti. It used to be so vibrant when I was younger. Why don't we add the finishing touch and really show we were becoming a third world country and fill the empty shops with illegal migrants instead of putting them up in £500,000 new build houses? We really need a new way of running this country. Nothing is working, says Ernie. Well, Ernie, you've got a new Prime Minister. He wants to do things very differently. We'll see, and we will evaluate, of course, what he says and does. So delighted, says this texter, to hear Georgina on tonight. Haven't heard her in ages. Always love her contribution. I feel the same way. I feel the same way about Caroline. Feel the same way about Mark. Feel the same way about lots of people who have been in touch. And we're going to speak to callers, old and new, regular and not so regular, in the next hour, including Caroline, who I promised we would get back on the air. Dean says, I seem to remember Gobby Angie and the rest of them constantly telling Boris, lawbreakers can't be lawmakers. That's a very interesting point. Michelle says, 90p a week, Peter, 90p, maybe enough for a cheap couple of pints of milk. You'd be lucky, Michelle. Are Talk really expecting its viewers to be happy about this rearranging of the chairs on the Titanic? It's a joke. They're all puppets and bad actors. West Streeting as Defence Secretary, I would laugh if it wasn't so sad. What a desperate, pathetic move by the establishment. Our people are still being taken for granted and hurt daily. The boats are still coming. We are not falling for it. Please, please be different at Talk and call it out for the charade it is. Michelle, I think we are calling it out for the charade it is. I think we are evaluating it and saying, is this actually going to change things? 86p a week is clearly not a lot of money at all. Maybe it's something. Whatever you think, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. There's so much more to talk about in the final hour of the programme, including this bizarre policing story about pride marches. Stay with us for that. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is Talk on the Evening Exchange. We're reacting to the breaking news that PC Harper's killers, Andrew Harper's killers, are set for early release. They're set to be released early from jail under Labour plans to tackle prison overcrowding. Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole, who were jailed for 13 years in 2020 for the manslaughter of Andrew Harper. They are now eligible to be free just halfway through their sentences. We will talk about that. Graham Wetton, who's a retired Met Police officer and author, will be with us in a second. We're also going to talk about the the Deputy Chief Constable, actually, of the police service in Northern Ireland, who says the landmark decision to quit Pride was the hardest decision of his 25-year policing career. Bizarre statement, which I think he will come to regret. We'll talk as well about the White House. They're concerned over Ed Miliband being Foreign Secretary. It was the first cabinet meeting, I should say, of Prime Minister Andy Burnham today. Whatever else you want to talk about, whether it is to do with an election, whether it's Burnham, whether it's the BBC, whatever we've been talking about this evening, you're very, very welcome to give me a shout and get your voice on the air between now and 10 o'clock when Petteri Hoskin is on. She's on between 10 and 1. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can follow me on Instagram as well at Cardwell Peter. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, a WhatsApp voice note, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Let's get going here on the Evening Exchange. Well, this is a breaking story in the Telegraph newspaper, reporting tonight that two of PC Andrew Harper's killers are set to be released early from jail under Labour's plans to tackle prison overcrowding. Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole were jailed for 13 years 6 years ago for the manslaughter of PC Harper, who was 28. They're now eligible to be freed halfway through their sentences under the Ministry of Justice's early release scheme. The pair were 17 at the time. In August 2019, they were in a car. They drove a car that dragged PC Harper for more than a mile along country roads when his ankles got caught in a tow rope loop. He had gone to investigate the theft of a quad bike. The third killer, Henry Long, he's not eligible for early release, but Bowers and Cole tried to escape in his car. PC Harper sustained serious injuries and died in the road. Debbie Adlam, who's the police officer's mother, has been told that his killers may have their sentence reduced in a letter from the Ministry of Justice, which admits the information may be difficult given the lasting impact the offence may have had on you. She told the Telegraph that the potential early release of the killers was an insult beyond anything able to be put into words. It makes me feel sick, said PC Harper's mother. Andrew's life doesn't get to come back. It feels like a slap in the face and an insult. People are getting a free pass for crime in this country. I like to try to be proud of my country, but this isn't something to be proud of. There's a lot going wrong. Let's speak to Graham Wetton, who is a retired Metropolitan Police officer and author. Graham, undoubtedly, there will be many angry people as a result of this, not least Debbie Adlam, PC Harper's mother. It is a really bitter pill to swallow that these two scumbags could be back on the streets within weeks.
Yeah, evening, Peter.
Evening.
That breaking news, I think, is just shocking. I think really it shows there is no protection for police officers who go out every day to try and protect society. As you mentioned, PC Andrew Harper was dragged to his death. I can remember an image of I think there's three of them on conviction. They just looked like they were laughing. Do you remember there was a picture of them? They were laughing and going off to, like they're going off on a holiday or something together. So I imagine they're laughing now. 6 years, they're being let out early release. It just defies explanation, really. I think the government need to look at this, the Home Secretary, and we still got the same Home Secretary, fortunately. She needs to look at this urgently. If there's some sort of like a bill or review they can do before they actually let them out. These aren't the sort of people that are suitable for early release.
The problem is, though, we can feel very angry about this particular instance, as I know Elisa in Chelmsford does. She has just sent through a message that says, I feel physically sick at the prospect of PC Andrew Harper's killers being released. Disgusting labour, utter madness, shameful and unforgivable. This is just one example. This is a horrible, horrible example, but we've got serious criminals, killers, rapists, child groomers being let out of prison because there aren't enough spaces. They're eligible to be freed halfway through their sentences, provided they've not committed any serious rule breaches while in prison. There's so many people, there are countless families like PC Harper's families who are going to be receiving the same letters and experiencing the same thing, Graham.
Yeah, fair point. I think you highlight a great point there. That clearly, the government, Mr. Burnham, I know he's not been in the job that long, but they seriously need to review. The deterrent for committing crime is, the ultimate deterrent is imprisonment. Receiving a custodial sentence that protects the public, takes you out of society for whatever period of time the trial judge decides once you're convicted of it. To be told then, this is why you see these sentences come out in the news, 15 years, 13 years, 11 years. Most police officers know, because we know and understand the system, as do the criminals. That doesn't mean the time they're going to serve. They are going to come out early. Early release has been brought in because there's not enough prison places. So we urgently need more prison places. It's something the government must address urgently.
This is something that is going to run. I'd love to hear people's views on it. I know we've had some people in touch already, and I will take some calls on this, 0344 499 1000. We will return to this in a few minutes. I want to talk to Graham as well about a story we originally invited you on to, and thank you for reacting to that breaking story, Graham. This is about a man called Bobby Singleton. He is a senior officer, Deputy Chief Constable in the Northern Ireland Police Service. A bizarre story where he has talked about the decision to withdraw his officers from a Pride march, said it was the hardest thing in a 25-year policing career. I mean, within that quarter of a century, we've had officers targeted, murdered by dissident Republicans. We've had people injured, maimed. We've had John Caldwell, DCI John Caldwell, who was nearly killed by dissident Republicans. He has thankfully recovered from many of his injuries, although those scars, physical and mental, will continue. We've had the Deputy Chief Constable say that it was the hardest and most difficult thing I've been involved with in 25 years in policing, precisely because we understood acutely what the impact of this was going to be in terms of the community, but importantly as well our own officers and staff, for whom it has been absolutely huge. Roy McComb, who's a former Deputy Director of the National Crime Agency, he was also a senior officer in the PSNI, said, I'm sure Bobby Singleton will reflect on those words and realise they were poorly phrased. Fair cop as well, that doesn't want the police to be politicised, said if that is remotely true, you should not be anywhere near any police force. What do you make of this, Graham?
I found the comment astonishing. I think he said it at the time, I think about 3 years ago, he said it at the time when the decision came out shortly after the Stop Northumbria police taking part in a similar Pride parade. I think policing shouldn't be politicised, but to say it's the hardest decision you've ever taken in a a very significant policing career at 25 years, I just found it astonishing and unbelievable. I think it probably shows how distant some senior officers are from actual operational and frontline policing. To make a decision to remove your officers from a parade, and you describe that as the hardest decision you've ever had to take, it again defies logic or explanation, because police officers deal with all manner of things. And my understanding of his policing career has been fairly operational and active. I don't need to tell you how challenging it is to police that part.
Well, it's often said that Northern Ireland, even now, is the second most challenging part of the UK to police after the Metropolitan Police. And we've often had various senior officers going for Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police and so on, who've been Chief Constable in Northern Ireland. So it does strike me as a bizarre thing. And I tell you what my viewers and listeners worry about, and you will know, of course, from your former colleagues, Graham, and because you're an expert in this field, people are worried that there are senior officers who just have lost that connection with the Bobby on the beat, who are worried about what it looks like if officers go to a Pride march or if they don't go to a Pride march, instead thinking about, hold on, burglaries, robberies, keeping rapists and murderers and burglars and all those people off the streets, the really straightforward stuff about law and order, when actually there's so much politics in policing, and policing has become so politicised, when actually I honestly don't really care if police officers are part of a pride march or not part of a pride march. I think that on principle they probably shouldn't be, because it is quite politicised, but it doesn't keep me up at night. It doesn't worry me that much. But what does worry me is how little crime is actually being detected, and how the upper echelon of police don't seem to have a connection with the ordinary man and woman in the street who just wants those burglaries solved.
I think you speak to operational officers, frontline officers, and actually, I did all my career in the Met, and I've worked with and closely with previously IUC officers, PSNI officers in more recent times. I'd actually say it's a more challenging environment to police in. You saw the disorder recently in Belfast. I faced serious disorder in London. It wasn't on the same level they faced in Belfast. I found some of the tactics interesting, challenging. So I actually think in some instances, it's even more challenging than police in parts of London. So to say it's the most difficult decision he's ever had to take, I think it just shows how far removed some senior officers can become. I'd like to think he reflects on what he said. Maybe it was in the heat of the moment or whatever, he's trying to justify or explain the difficulty, the decision, or how difficult he found the decision. But to say it's the hardest one in 25 years of policing, I just found, like other colleagues, found it absolutely astonishing. And it questions almost like how in touch you are with what things are like on the street and for the public and police officers.
Very good points, well made. Thank you, Graham Wetton there, who's a retired Metropolitan Police officer and author. And just to go back to that breaking news about Andrew Harper, PC Andrew Harper, his killers set to be released early from jail under Labour's plans to tackle prison overcrowding. This is two people who got into a car with someone driving it, dragging along a policeman, dragging him along for a mile, and he died of his injuries. Can you imagine the cruelty, the horrendous intent there, the lack of regard for another human being, the evil that they had, and they're going to serve 6.5 years in prison each? Really? 6.5 years? For a life? For the life of a police officer? Of someone who was trying to detect crime, who was trying to investigate the theft of a quad bike? He was just doing his job. Just doing his job. Elliot's in Hertfordshire. 0344 499 1000 is the number that Elliot has called to speak to me. Elliot, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm just trying to stay calm on that news about this poor family and this poor policeman. I think I need to take a few Valium. When I heard that news, I just felt so disgusted. First of all, who was the stupid, idiotic, infantile judge that made that decision? Where is he? He should be completely thrown out of the legal profession. Doing a crime like that deserves life. They are rotten to the core. Absolutely. And this is just axiomatic of what the country has become. The poor family, this is just one, as you say, in many. 6 years, I have never heard such rubbish, Peter, in all my life.
And when you think about that officer and his family involved, we've heard the heartbreaking words of his mother. I read them out a few minutes ago. He and his wife, Lissy, PC Andrew Harper and his wife, Lissy, did not have any children. The couple had only been married for 4 weeks. They planned to start trying for a baby after their honeymoon, before the Thames Valley police officer was murdered in August 2019.
It's disgusting. And here's the thing. Aren't enough rooms there aren't enough places in prison? I'll tell you what to do. Get hold of all the rotten international aid that we give countries like Pakistan recently, who won't take back this other revolting individual, and take that money and build more prisons. Tories were just as guilty as this mob. Outer Hebrides would be a good place.
The thing is as well, Elliot, the thing as well is that these people and this family and this example is just one example. An analysis, an analysis of Ministry of Justice data estimated almost 2,500 rapists and paedophiles will be eligible for release, including more than 100 rapists jailed for more than 15 years. An MOJ spokesman said this was a horrific crime. Our deepest sympathies are with PC Andrew Harper's family and friends. Well, don't release his killers then.
Well, I agree. And that just shows you, if I may say, the moral relativism, which is absolutely appalling. What goes for one is considered not the same for another, because it's all to do with mindset and culture. And our complete demeanour of this country, our culture, socially, politically, economically, judicially, has completely been ruined by successive governments. And this idiot that's come into power will be no different. I mean, you know, they've got a felon, Haig. She's in cabinet. What does that tell you? You've got Miliband as foreign secretary. You've had Lord Homer. He's been kicked out. Who are they going to get now? The whole system, including the judiciary, as an example of this horrible, horrible incident, has been ruined. And I say again, it is completely axiomatic of the country. And the terrible thing is, we vote these people in. It's our fault, dare I say. Everyone's entitled to vote. We vote them in. In order to get this country right, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, the civil service, the police, the schools, the further education establishment needs to be fixed. It's going to take at least 20, 25 years. And while I'm on, where's the head of police? What's he saying about this? I haven't heard anything unless I'm going deaf. I haven't heard a word from him. Yeah. I think the whole... do you know what? I think there's no future at the moment for this country until someone comes in and says, this is how it's going to be. You don't like it here, then get out. It's as simple as that. I am so disgusted, and as you quite rightly say, Peter, this is the tip of the iceberg. We bring in all this CRAP into the country. I'll probably be called racist for saying that, but it's true. And we let out, whether they're our own citizens, our indigenous population, or people that have come in, we let them out and to do the same thing. 6 years for, in my view, it's practically incarcerated murder. That's what it is. And no one is talking about it because they're all frightened, because they don't care and they're not interested. It's interesting, isn't it, Peter?
Listen, Elliot, thank you so much. I think you've spoken for so many people this evening. You've summed that up brilliantly and far better than I could. Great call, so much common sense spoken, and there's so much more to think about as a result of listening to you, Elliot. So I really appreciate that. That's Elliot in Hertfordshire. We're going to take more calls in just a minute, including Caroline in London. She's first up after the break. Stay with us.
Get to the calls now, and Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Hey. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to
disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people.
More people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's been in touch, including David in Canterbury. Within a year, Burnham's left-wing government will have short-circuited every postcode and created a growth in every heart. See what you did there. Sue says Burnham throws a few crumbs and thinks he's being generous. It's insulting. Scrap net zero and stop the Chagos travesty. Simon in Manningtree. Simon, I haven't heard from you in a few nights. It's great to hear from you. Peter, I can't help but feel that we're all being taken for idiots. There's VAT reduction on the electric bill. We'll save around 85p a month. Yippee. Then, more than likely, Ofgem will raise the price cap in October and no doubt in January as well. How about tackling more important issues that will save more illegal immigration, benefits claims? Haven't heard anything, a word. Have not heard the word immigration from Andy Burnham. Different face, same old Labour, says Simon and Manningtree. Thanks, Peter. Margaret says, what a brilliant call from Elliot. I think he spoke for all of us. Let's get another brilliant call now. Caroline, as promised, you're back on the air and I appreciate your patience. We just had a technical problem a little bit earlier on with Angela Knight. You were cut off in your stride. Please tell us what's on your mind this evening, Caroline.
Well, I appreciate you, Peter. Sorry, I'm a bit lost now after that last call.
It was very affecting. I would really thought he was great.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start at the beginning and then I'll move, if I may, to what he was talking about.
Sure.
So basically we have one criminal in government quite high up. She's a criminal. She's got a criminal record, number one. Number two, the other point I wanted to make is the way the system is set up. The Prime Minister picks his cabinet, and basically it's a bribe. They get bigger salaries, they get bigger pensions, and they have to vote with the Prime Minister whether they agree or not to keep their jobs. The backbenchers, some of them will revolt, but some of them won't because they're hoping that if they vote for the government, they might get a pay rise, they might get another role closer to government. The whole system is corrupt. I haven't got a word. It's beyond corrupt. It is so disgusting. And they are laughing at us. 80p a month towards our electricity bills. They're just laughing at us. That's what I wanted to, that's some points I wanted to make. As for this police officer, we have got no law in this country anymore, Peter. No, there's no law here. We're not a country anymore. It is absolutely abhorrent about this police officer, abhorrent about the rape gang guy out. It's abhorrent. I'm fuming. Giving 150 million to Pakistan. They're sending people to the moon. We need the money. They don't need the money. Stop all visas. So no one's coming from Pakistan. You don't get a penny. I mean, we are spineless. We are not heading. We are already here. We are not a society anymore. There's no communities anymore. And the most dangerous people here, I think, are the left. They are so dangerous. It's unbelievable. And it's terrifying.
Well, what do you make of what Mark Francois said earlier on in the programme, the Shadow Defence Minister? He says he thinks this is the most left-wing government he can remember. Obviously, we're only a day in, but there are a lot of indicators for that, and that is not going to make things better when it comes to what you're talking about, Caroline.
I don't think it's left. I think it's Marxist communism on a scale that we've never had in our history. I actually do. I really do. And it's terrifying. I mean, okay. God knows what Angela Rayner's going to do to the housing market. They're not talking about business. I've got friends who've got businesses. They're on the verge of collapse. Nothing about business.
I know a businessman. He's a very, very good businessman. He had three shops. Now it's down to 2. He's been a businessman for the last 30 years. It's someone I know in Scotland. And he said, look, this is the hardest time. This is the hardest time he's ever had to run a business, to employ people, to get people through the door and to sell things and to pay taxes. He just said the government's just making it harder and harder and harder.
Absolutely. And so he hasn't mentioned immigration, he hasn't mentioned net zero, and he hasn't mentioned business. The three top subjects, and everyone's going on about Farage. He's not a criminal. We've got a criminal in our government high up. It is so appalling. I don't have words for it. I went and got an Uber yesterday because Sunday there were no tubes again working in London under Sadiq Khan. Okay, this guy, I think he was about 28 years old, really nice guy. He told me he got made redundant last year in IT. Him and his friend have set up a business. In October, they've moved the business to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
They're moving to Hong Kong. They won't have to pay a penny of tax.
This is the thing. This is the thing, Caroline. If I was that 28-year-old, if I was someone who was in my 20s and thought, hold on a second, I can go to Dubai, I can go to Hong Kong, I can go to all these different places and do roughly the same thing. We're in a really globalised world now, and people say, oh, you know, we have to charge people the right level of tax. People should pay a bit more if they earn more money or whatever. They're just going to other places. I'm not talking about the millionaires and the billionaires. I'm talking about people like that Uber driver who have a good business idea, who are thinking, I can do this and earn more money if I just move country. And people have the wherewithal and the means to do that at the moment, and they're doing it.
But what about people, you know, like me, for example, or people that don't have a business now, or lost their business like me during COVID, and can't rebuild, and don't have the money to move to these places? What do we do? I feel like we're hostages in our own country.
And I think a lot of people feel the same way, and I'm so sorry about your business, Caroline, and I do appreciate your call. There's a lot in that. There's an awful lot in that. There's a lot in the call from Elliot as well, and if you want to react to anything that both Caroline and Elliot have said, please do give me a shout before 10 o'clock, 0344 499 1000. Ian in Cambridge is a new caller. I want to get him on now. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme, and I understand you have some thoughts on Andrew Harper, PC Harper.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. It's Jim.
Jim, apologies. I had Ian in front of me, but apologies. Jim, okay. Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Yeah, 6 years ago, we had a little motorbike ride. And
this was after PC Andrew Harper's murder?
This was all organised from MCC in Oxford.
Okay.
Obviously, where I was, it's about 100 mile away, and 8,000 bikes.
Goodness me, and they were in support of PC Harper?
Just to show respect.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it's disgusting.
There's been a lack of respect shown with this policy, I would argue. What do you think, Jim?
They should be let out. They should never be let out. It's like the rest of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
It should never be let out.
It was a horrible, horrible crime, and there are so many people who will receive those letters who will go through the same thing as PC Harper's family.
It's everything, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Rape, whatever.
Yeah.
Grooming gangs. Why? Why? You tell me what we should do.
I'm not sure I know what the answer to that is, Jim, but I really appreciate your call, and please do give me a ring again. That's Jim in Cambridge there. I appreciate that. Kevin in Sheffield says, absolutely brilliant call from Elliot a little bit earlier on. I feel all his frustration. I completely agree with all the points he made. I'm guessing the silent majority in this country feel exactly the same. Great show, Peter, says Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Margaret says, what a brilliant call from Elliot. I think he spoke for all of us. Ernie says, it's not that we don't have enough prisons, it's because we have too many criminals. That's why Lammy doesn't want us to know how many. Well, he's not the Justice Secretary anymore. Maybe that will come through. It'll be interesting. We talked about that last night with Rob from the Centre for Migration Control. What's Rob's surname? Sorry, I forget. Just off the top of my head. We spoke to him earlier. Robert Bates. That's why Lammy doesn't want us to know how many. It's like when someone is walking in the town centre, says Ernie, minding their business and gets stabbed, and they say they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, they weren't. Law and order in this country has broken down. Catherine in Cardiff says there's only one word to describe Bobby Singleton, and that is pathetic. This is the PSNI Deputy Chief Constable. This man has no place in any police force. We need strong, sensible men and women who represent and protect the ordinary Joe. Sue says, I received my £180 BBC tax demand. I never watch any BBC channels. They have nothing for me. I'm 82 years old. And Sim in Wanstead. Sim, I haven't heard from you in a little while. Good to have you back texting in. Sim says, let's get Georgina into government. She'd give them a run for their money. I'm going to hold judgment for this newish Labour team until further notice, if you don't mind. Great show, as usual, says Sim. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. We'll talk in just a second about Ed Miliband and what the Trump administration thinks. There's also been a couple of bits of developing stories in regard to America and Ukraine over the last hour or so. We'll bring you up to date on all of those in a second. And we'll take a load more calls as well. Please do ring in 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a bit of breaking news over the past hour or so, and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has sacked the country's Commander-in-Chief, Alexander Syrsky. His dismissal comes just days after the removal of the Defence Minister. That triggered street protests across the country. We're going to go to America now to speak to Matt Bielinski, who's an attorney and host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. Matt, there's a lot I want to talk to you about tonight. Just a quick reaction to Zelensky, because he is, of course, fated as, I mean, people are talking about the Prime Minister in this country, Andy Burnham, being fated as the Messiah. Well, Zelensky's fated as the Messiah, but clearly there are many, many problems within his own country and how his government is run and how his military is run.
Yeah, that would seem to be the case, which is interesting right now because, and once again, it's difficult to sift through this during the fog of war, particularly one that's gone on for so long, like the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But things seemingly are going pretty well on the battlefield for the Ukraine. I mean, to a certain extent, evidenced simply by the fact that this war is still going on, that, you know, a much more powerful fighting force, the Russians, who believed that they were going to be able to win this war within a week and a half. You know, we sit now, God, 4 years later, and the Ukraine has been able to drag this out and seems to be making a lot of headway against the Russians. So interesting that you're seeing activities that would suggest that Zelensky is not happy or is concerned with how the military is being run and the defense of his country, because it does appear that things are seemingly going fairly well. So then you think, is it kind of a palace politics, a palace intrigue situation where it's just personal rivalries, things of that nature? I can't pretend that I know that much about him, but the gentleman who is supposed to be the replacement for that as the commander-in-chief is apparently held in very, very high regard. So maybe he just believes that there's better people available, better talent on the bench to come in and conduct this war.
How much patience is there for Zelensky at the moment? We've seen a very scratchy relationship between him and Trump at various points. This war is raging on. From an American perspective, when you look at Congress, when you look at the Trump administration, how much patience is there, do you think?
Believe it or not, more than there used to be, right? Because during the first phase of this war that occurred while Joe Biden was still in office, and then into kind of the first, let's call it 6 to 9 months of the second Trump administration, the position, let's call it MAGA position, was far more Ukraine skeptical. And I think that after coming in and seeing, I think that Trump thought that he really had such a good relationship with Putin that he could come in and convince Putin to come to the negotiating table and end this war. And I think Trump was turned off by the fact that he was unable to with Putin, and perhaps not really improving, the standing of Zelensky in Trump's eyes, but maybe incidentally, because in realizing that Putin was more obstinate and wasn't so willing to be a peace partner as Trump had assumed, that kind of let's say recomposed Donald Trump's views on how the war was started and really to blame for its continuance. So I think there's a little more patience in the Trump administration for Zelensky in the Ukraine than those people might have thought when Trump took office back in early 2025.
Tell us a development that's happened in the last couple of hours. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, giving evidence to Congress. A disruption there?
I must admit, I did not see this the Hegseth announcement. What was the
Oh, he was in Congress giving evidence to Congress, and there was a disturbance there. There were some protesters who came in, but not to worry. Let's talk about another member of the Trump administration, the president himself, because Ed Miliband is our new foreign secretary. He has said some choice things about your president previously. Let's remind ourselves what he said in 2018.
Well, he actually said on this Piers Morgan interview, apparently, I saw the clip, I think, I'm really popular in Britain. No, you're not. And I think it's very important that people, show, and what is objectionable about him? His racism, his misogyny, his incredibly peculiar relationship with Russia.
And the truth.
And the truth, most of all the truth. And, who he is as a person. I mean, there's a line.
That was Ed Miliband speaking in 2018. That man's our chief diplomat now, Matt. What reception is he likely to receive at the White House?
Not particularly a friendly one. Yes, we know that Donald Trump and the Trump administration, they hold grudges. They take a very aggressive approach towards those who oppose them on policy grounds. But consider that video was from 2018. And at that period, what you heard from Mr. Miliband was the party line for any member of the transatlantic liberal order. And he was given the same spiel that everybody else who fits that description was. And Donald Trump is a racist, a sexist, crazy Russian agent and whatnot. But we've seen the evolution of enough people's views, or at least their approach towards dealing with Donald Trump. And, that's an easy thing to say when you're not in a position where you have to deal with him. Now, Mr. Miliband does have to deal with Donald Trump. And we've seen that, if Trump gets his pound of flesh from a former enemy who is now trying to finesse him, trying to warm up to him, who understands that it's probably not a good idea for the UK, for Ed Miliband, the new position that he's in, to be so hostile to the Trump administration, starts to walk back some of those comments. We see that Trump, as long as you bend the knee properly, will forgive past transgressions. So we'll see what.
We had our former Deputy Prime Minister, who was also the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, tragically no longer in government and contemplating presumably a broadcasting career again, and perhaps another appearance in Celebrity Mastermind. He called Donald Trump a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath.
Yeah, well, listen, once again, not the only one, not the first or the
I mean, J.D. Vance slagged off Donald Trump to a huge extent, so you can sort of get away with it, can't you?
Exactly. So as long as you come back hat in hand and give him the hint, wink, wink, that you understand that, okay, now, Donald Trump, you're in the position of power in this relationship, and we will be more conciliatory and work with you on your policy objectives. And do it in a more conciliatory manner and finesse him. The relationships can be repaired, but it's certainly not if he takes the same approach he has in the past.
Matt, thank you. That's Matt Belinsky there, who is an attorney and also host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. He's on his way to the Philippines as we speak, burning up all that carbon, polluting the atmosphere as we, all of us, mostly anyway, sit in our homes and are burning a lot less carbon, burning a lot less electricity. Very interesting. Gareth in Doncaster said Parliament needs to be recalled. The release of Harper's Killers, an absolute travesty. PC Harper's Killers, we'll be talking about that. Charlotte says if our government can set up COVID hospitals, they can set up prisons. Get the army building in remote islands, no hassle. Still disturbed by the Anne killing. She was my favourite person to see being interviewed, and Charlotte has some thoughts on Anne Widdecombe's killing, and certainly there are active court case proceedings, so we'll just be careful what I say about that. Wouldn't want to be in any way prejudicing that, of course. Simon in Manningtree says, I've just had my energy renewal pop up on my email. My current tariff £117 a month, fixed renewal tariff £145, so I can say goodbye to that VAT reduction. Paul in London says if we had a proper government, they'd look at the prison overcrowding crisis and say, someone with a bit of common sense would say, let's return every foreign national offender to their home country. If the country refuses to take them back, we'll stop financial aid immediately. It's not complicated. I'd also leave the ECHR. I'd make prison spaces of punishment rather than somewhere people are comfortable, and I believe crime would fall. Close our borders. The left's naivety is astonishing, says Paul in London. Thank you for that. Marie is in Barry in Wales. Marie, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Peter.
Hi there.
I just wanted to talk about, obviously, all the political things that are being, obviously, with the SPADs, the special advisors.
You've come to the right place, Marie.
The special advisors. I love the special advisors.
Really?
I do. I love listening to them. But what I'm wondering is, why aren't the political parties listening to the special advisors?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because once you leave... Sorry, go ahead, Marie.
Should be in the government.
I mean, there are people that listen to now who are acting as those special advisors right now, but these people are only free to make their views public after they leave government, so we don't know what they're thinking right now.
But when they were special advisors, maybe they should have been the ones in the government.
Well, do you know what, Marie? I used to be a special advisor, as you may know, and wrote about it.
Maybe you should have been there too, Peter.
Well, I wrote a book about it called The Secret Life of Special Advisors. I highly recommend it. So if you want to find out more about what they do, you can have a look at that, Marie. But listen, thanks for your...
They are brilliant, no matter what party.
Yes.
They are just brilliant.
Okay, well,
and
listen.
we should be advocating them more.
A lot of people don't like them. A lot of people say that they shouldn't be part of the government. But Marie, thank you for your opinion. I really appreciate that, and I do recommend that book. Craig in Yorkshire has given me a shout about the BBC. Craig, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi Peter, good evening.
Hi there.
I heard you talking earlier about the BBC, and I've got some ideas, and I think we've seen it being demonstrated whilst the World Cup was playing out. I mean, in our house, we don't have a traditional TV with antenna setup. We just have a kind of plug-in stick, actually the same brand of stick that your parent company just bought in the US. We got a little Roku stick plugged into the telly.
Oh yeah.
So we consumed BBC iPlayer to watch the football in 4K. There was no buffering whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great technical demonstration of the art of the possible. And all of that is made possible through what's called content delivery networks. So it doesn't stress the broadcaster when these transmissions are made. It's all done down at the ISP level. So they send one transmission across the internet to, say, Virgin Media, and they distribute it on their internal network to their internet subscribers. So there's a classic demonstration of what could be done.
You're a bit like Jennifer Aniston in those shampoo adverts. Here's the science.
And at the same time, Ofcom are talking about turning off the digital free-to-air transmission network, and the FreeSat satellites go end of life in 5 years. They're going to fall out of the sky. So I think the model for the BBC going forward is the same as what you have for Netflix, Amazon Prime. It should be an application on your TV that you choose to subscribe to.
So the technology is just has advanced to such a huge degree, Craig. I mean, I understood most of what you're saying there, but the technology has clearly gone on leaps and bounds. And this is not about... The TV licence previously was about sustaining a service that was there because it kind of needed to be there and that wasn't offered elsewhere. There isn't a huge amount the BBC does that isn't elsewhere. I mean, maybe local news, local TV news. I mean, that is something that is done to some degree in other places. But I mean, someone earlier made the point about children's television, which is everywhere now. You know, we've all seen kids in front of YouTube watching all sorts of cartoons and things. Also on Netflix and various other things, there's particular kids channels. So what should the funding model be? Should it be the same as something like Netflix or Amazon Prime? Should it be $8.99 a month or whatever?
I think really there should be a hybrid model. So I think everything that's been prepaid for up until a point in time in the future, you know, that's been paid for by the license fees should be available for a very, very, very small cost. So if you're interested to watch, you know, all the episodes of Only Fools and Horses or Hello, Hello, they've been paid for. That should be available to you for a nominal cost to reflect the cost of that streaming, cost of the egress charges from the cloud, etc. But there could also be an element which is centrally funded for things that people wouldn't necessarily want to subscribe to. I don't know, songs of praise and train spotting live when they have cameras at stations watching steam trains arrive.
Niche interests. I mean, there are some pretty random things on things like some of those brilliant Scandi dramas on BBC Four. I quite like those, but they're probably not the most popular things. I mean, should we have public service broadcasting that does those things that aren't available elsewhere? Because I'm for that. What I'm not really for is the stuff that someone else will make anyway, like Strictly Come Dancing, The Traitors or whatever.
Well, exactly, and those niche programs, because, you know, I come back to the UK 10 years ago and I turned the TV on and I saw this train spotting program, and I was fascinated because I'd never seen anything like it. It was amazing. And that could be funded centrally, but the likes of Strictly and Traitors, they could be at a higher tier of subscription that reflects the cost of making those programs, because I'm sure they don't come cheaply. Those, you know, you can stop just putting a camera on Crew Station. It's actually something a bit more in-depth that's required to make those programs. So I think it should be hybrid. It should be subscription-based. We've just had the technical demonstration to prove that is possible. They should switch off the broadcasting networks free-to-air, because I think the days of watching scheduled TV broadcasts have kind of gone by.
No, there are very few people who do that. I mean, I can't think... I'm trying to think, maybe the 10 o'clock news sometimes, but I mean, I will sit down, usually when The Traitors is on, I'll watch it kind of quote-unquote live, because I really love that show, but there's very little, I think, that is appointment to view TV. That has changed to a huge degree, Craig.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also there needs to be some control over their radio output as well. And I think there needs to be a level playing field, and it should be that there be a common DAB plus broadcasting platform that's available to BBC output and commercial broadcasters, because, you know, at the end of the day, where we live in our little valley in Yorkshire, if we put the DAB tuner on in our car, we can only get BBC stations. We have to drive 5 miles before we can pick you up on DAB. And that's not right. It's putting you and Chris Evans and your other station output at a disadvantage over the state broadcaster. So that should be turned into a level playing field.
Well, I for one, am delighted, Craig, you find other ways to listen and to watch us, and indeed to contribute. I really appreciate that. I learned a lot from that conversation, Craig, in Yorkshire there. And one of our listeners has made me aware of a very interesting tweet that Nick Timothy, who's the Shadow Justice Secretary, has put out about Ellie Reeves. Ellie Reeves has now been made the Attorney General. She's Rachel Reeves' sister. She's also an MP in her own right as well. And a number of months ago, there's a criminal, Mohammed Abdul Razik, who dragged a little girl off the street, sexually assaulted her. He referred the case, Nick Timothy, to the Attorney General after he was sentenced to only 11 years in prison. And Labour said it wasn't unduly lenient. Ellie Reeves was then the Solicitor General who got back to Mr Timothy about that. And she's just been promoted to Attorney General. So that is something that he has tweeted about, and a number of people, including our listener L, isn't happy about. Also, quite a number of people getting in touch about PC Harper as well. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Andy Burnham and what he is doing or indeed not doing. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, please do give me a shout. We'll take some more calls in just a moment. We'll also talk to Patrick Hoskin, who is on between 10 and 1 with What's on Her programme. But still time for calls with me. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Get to the calls now, and Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to
disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people.
More people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jason's been in touch and says, from the Lake District, who says the average age of a soldier dying in Vietnam was actually 19. And as the song goes, of course, Jason also says, Kemi should be screaming from the highest tree to call this madness out. She won't, because this is on 14 years of Tory failure. It's absolutely shameful, and the politicians who presided over this should be in prison. Nevin says, Georgina from London should have her own slot or show on Talk. And Nick says, I'm not sure which special advisors Marie has been listening to. Most of them I hear are totally insane. I think advisors should not come from the university and have been indoctrinated with the same spiel. Well, listen, there's a very good book about it, that's all I can say. Amy says, great show. Andy Burnham spoke on Friday when he became Labour leader. He said that he had a plan to fix things. Call me a cynic, I don't think he does. I think realistically his honeymoon period will last until the first budget, if he gets that far. Amy, certainly speaking about Andy Burnham, Marcus and thoughts. He's giving me a ring from Lincolnshire. The number he's called is 0344 499 1000. Mark, what's on your mind this evening?
I've got two things I want to quickly go touch on, Peter.
Sure.
Hi, by the way.
Hi.
Yeah, Andy Burnham, can we just take the foot off the gas a little bit and just give the guy a few months, see what he actually does, for a start? You know, hearing people clutching their pearls already is a little bit like, come on.
We can evaluate his actions so far. He's appointed a cabinet. He's put people in there that some of our viewers and listeners are not happy with. He's also given this fat reduction. I mean, we can talk about that.
Yeah, you can talk about that, obviously. But all I'm saying is, everybody, you know, I keep hearing a lot of people panicking about how terrible this is going to be. And don't get me wrong, it probably will be terrible, but at least wait till it actually gets terrible. You know, I don't see much point in, as I say, clutching pearls over it straight away.
Okay.
You know, give him a little bit of time to screw things up before we start ripping into the guy. You never know. Maybe he'll surprise us. I doubt it, but, you know, there we go. But the other thing I want to touch on as well, which nobody seems to have talked about, which is kind of bread and butter for Talk and GB News and all the rest of them, but for some strange reason they don't want to talk about it, probably because he's representing Restore Britain, I would imagine, and that is Marlon West, who is the mayoral candidate for Restore Britain.
For Manchester.
Manchester, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've interviewed him on a number of occasions. I'm happy to talk about him.
Yeah, well, he's just been suspended by the Nursing and Midwifery Council.
He's been what? Sorry, say that again?
Suspended.
Okay.
From the Nursing and Midwifery Council after 30 years of being a mental health nurse. The basis for this is because last year he posted a few things about the Pakistani rape gangs.
Okay.
Now, bearing in mind, this is a guy who, above anybody else really, has a right to talk about the Pakistani rape gangs, given his daughter was a victim of them. Nothing he's said is illegal, by the way. You know, it's perfectly legal speech that he's been, you know, posting out there about this. But they've taken it upon themselves a few days before this election to suspend him. And that just seems wholeheartedly wrong.
Okay. I didn't know he'd been suspended. I knew he was a candidate for the Greater Manchester mayoral election, Mark. I didn't know he'd been suspended. It just happened today that he's been suspended. I don't know. I'm sure you're telling me the facts as you understand them, Mark. There's no issue there. But listen, he is. I mean, they may well have reasons for doing that, but you don't think they do, Mark, presumably?
I don't think they do, no. I mean, as I say, from everything I can see, you know, certainly from the stuff he's posted out, there's nothing illegal there.
Okay.
Whatsoever.
Okay.
I mean, if there had been, it wouldn't be them suspending him. He'd be getting investigated by the police, wouldn't he, at the end of the day?
Well, there are different...
We all know how they are.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are things that can be a breach of electoral law. There are things that can be a breach of different regulations or frameworks that different organisations have versus the law, which can be very different as well. But listen, that is an interesting point. You've brought that to my attention, and thank you for it. Marlon Scott is the Restore Britain candidate. Marlon West, apologies. Marlon Scott West is his full name, and he is the Restore Britain candidate for the Mayor of Greater Manchester, replacing Andy Burnham, who became the MP for Makerfield and now Prime Minister, as well as Marlon West. The other candidates standing in that election are Sian Niamh Astley for Reform UK, Geraldine Coggins for the Green Party, Bev Craig for the Labour and Cooperative Party, Phil Eckersley for the Conservative Party, Marcus Jonathan Farmer, who's an independent, and Richard Martin Kilpatrick, who is from the Liberal Democrats. Time to get a quick word from Lenny in Ashford on Burnham. Lenny, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, you've had some really good callers today.
Agreed.
The young lady who said Burnham won't last till Christmas, I think she's totally correct.
Really? Could he be Labour's Liz Truss?
Pardon?
Could he be Labour's Liz Truss, Lenny?
Totally. Because he's treating everybody with contempt.
Really?
Why
is he treating them with contempt, do you think?
Well, he's treating it with contempt. I mean, all right, you look at he made a big thing, giving us all 80 pence a discount on our electric and that.
Yeah.
And then he's going to spend tens of millions of pounds or hundreds of £1 million giving it away, buying himself respectability around the world.
It's actually billions. It's going to be billions. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, and that shows you the contempt he's got for the people in this country.
Okay. Well, Lenny, I mean, he's giving something to us. Is that not something to be welcomed, even if it is a small amount of money?
Well, a friend and I were talking about it today, and what we're going to do, we're going to save it up, and in 5 weeks' time, we're going to go and have a coffee together.
Okay, you're going to save up your 86p. I think it's 86p a month. I don't think it's 86p a week.
I know, but but he said we'll go and celebrate and say thank you, and we'll have a coffee. Then we'll be. Well,
you're putting that money back into the economy, Lenny. So I hope you enjoy that coffee with your friend, and thank you very much for the call. That's Lenny in Ashford there. Someone who's worth a lot more than 86p a month is, of course, Pepri Hoskin.
Only just. Only just.
What a seamless link there. Good to see you. What's coming up in your programme?
It's very exciting, actually. I've got some exciting news to break of my own. But
when are you breaking it?
I don't know yet. I'm going to keep you guessing for probably about 5 minutes because I'm too excited.
Okay.
But anyway, coming up, we're going to be talking about, obviously, we're going to be talking about Burnham's first day and this ridiculous saving of £3 over 6 months. It's not even 86p a week.
It's more like 86p a month.
Yeah,
it's
really bad.
It's not a lot anyway.
Look,
it reminds me of the 75p increase in the pension, which was so derisory as well.
I know, but this is the thing is that he oversold it, and I think that's the point. I was saying that last night that if you're going to say you're going to do something proper, right? And I was worried that it was going to be this, but anyway. And also Darren Jones, that was funny.
Yes.
I mean, it's just it's the same old politics, isn't it? And you've got Anna Salwa now going into the House of Lords.
House of Lords, having failed really as Labour leader in Scotland. Yeah.
How is that new politics? How is any of this new?
How is it not factionalism as well? We've got rid of all the Starmerites, brought in all the Burnhamites. That guy who said Starmer should go. Yeah, we'll give him a job in a peerage.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same old stuff. We're going to be talking about ending homelessness.